We have three people signed up to provide comments from the public today. Before we start, board policy A0107 states, no person may speak more than once to an issue or for a period longer than 5 minutes, except upon the consent of a majority of the district board. No more than 3 people may be heard to one side of an issue, except upon the consent of a majority of the district board. During public comment, the board will not engage in public discussion regarding personnel matters for specific individuals. I have, as the first person, I can read Elijah. I'm not sure of the last name. Elijah, you want to come forward and tell us what your last name is? That end of the table, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elijah Holloway.
Thank you. Welcome.
I wanted to talk about the roommate safety and the safety like overall at West Town Green. I would just wanted to push for like I guess like a better, more thorough, I guess, checking like what I wanted to say. More like a I guess more thorough and like more thorough and I guess like a supervisory type, I guess, like to do more like background checks and keep everything like age requirements and like, you know what I'm saying, check for rooms and make sure everything is where everybody say they're supposed to be at, and you know what I'm saying, like age selections too, like keep students with students, basically, I guess, just to keep like I guess the safety of overall everything, I guess, better. That's my first time speaking. And then basically the cost, because I pay like I think like it's like $1,000 a month, but I have a studio, so I have like I guess it's different than everybody else's room, so I kind of understand like it's a little bit higher, but I'm not like a full-time worker, so I can't really keep up with. So I have to do other things to pay it down, and it's coming in conflict with like school. But I passed this semester, so it's not really like keeping me from taking care of all my business. But it's like for somebody else, it would, if they know how to, you know what I'm saying, manage and maintain it, you know, with time management. So, and then to have like I guess like just like add like a student housing, like at like a 4-year, they would have, you know, RAs on each floor. It would be room checks. It would be, you know what I'm saying, quiet hours, just basically like running it like a real, like it will become like an actual real dorm room instead of just like, oh, it'll say it's student housing, but it's not actually student housing. It's just like student apartments leased through a company to MATC, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Nicholas Wilson. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I would just like to speak on some of the issues I've been having with West Town Green. It's a lot of miscommunication, confusion. And my main issue was the system being down for 6 months. We did not have a portal to pay rent, and there was no emails being sent out about when a new system would be coming in. And then after that, I had met with the landlord about paying rent for July, which I did, and then he claimed that I didn't. And we went back and forth for about a week about it. And he then said, oh, he finally sees that I paid it. So it's just a lot of little incidents like that that don't make a lot of sense. Or he is very he's very pushy about us reaching out for a lot of different services to help us pay our rent, but he's not really providing a lot of insight on why certain things are the way they are. He doesn't really agree or stay on the same page as the terms in the lease. A lot of things he says contradicts themselves, and it just creates a lot of overall confusion for a lot of students. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One May Stokes, please. Welcome.
Thank you. I too have an issue with the Founders 3 and how they handled the portal coming up. I think the biggest part of it was the fact that when they switched over the company, they didn't set the portal up right away, and they informed students as well as other people in the building that the portal will be up within maybe 2 months. and that was from December to January. But then came February, they told us to either leave a check or wait for the portal. The portal didn't come until maybe April, May. I'm not really specific on the dates, but the month time frame is there. So between that time frame, the portal came, and that's when I had problems because I was told I was behind on rent. And so they had me reach out to community advocates, which was a big hassle because they didn't even pay out my rent until maybe October. And then they were trying to evict me and get me out of the building. So I had to deal with court situations. And still, after being told that after community advocates paid me or paid them, that I would be able to re-sign my lease, I still haven't re-signed my lease in this December. I'm dealing with paying them the money that I guess I owe them from that situation. So it's just a bunch of hassle and haggle for students to figure out how to pay rent at an apartment complex that should be covered already. So yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
For the record, thank you for addressing the board and sharing your concerns. The board will not be responding to any matter in adherence to the state of Wisconsin open meetings law, which prevents a governmental body from discussing any specific item that was not publicly noticed on the agenda. So thank you for your comments, but we can't respond directly tonight. Next is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting from November 28, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Director Burris, second by Director Baker.
It was Case.
We'll let her have the next one.
I like when we're arm wrestling.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
making motions.
Any questions or comments about the minutes as presented? There being none, approval has been moved by Director Burris and seconded by Director Baker. Would all those in favor indicate that by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend the rules for a moment here. The rule that I'm asking to have suspended is a rule that requires us to take matters up in the order they are on the agenda. The reason for this is you've received the OPEB and FCC trust reports, and there is the approval of, I'm just trying to get the right words here. The approval of the entity that manages the OPEB funds for continuation has been recommended to us. The report that they provided showed that they were not meeting all of the benchmarks that they worked toward, and they've asked for, or Mr. Hollow has asked for, an opportunity for them to address us, to explain that. Later, when we get to the procurement report, the approval of their contract is in there, and we'll have to decide whether we want to take it out or approve it as part of the consent items. So could I have a motion, please, to suspend the rules to take this matter out of order?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Case, second by Director Burris. Any discussion about this? Would all those in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, Mr. Hollow, would you give us a brief introduction here? And
Sure. PFM has been our investment advisors for the last 3.5 years. And we're at the end of the and we need to either renew, and we did what we did with the purchasing consortium within the state. With all the schools, we had investment advisors, present their case. And there were 3 investment advisors, including PFM, that were recommended. And internally, Director Case, Eva Keither, who's the controller, Sue Jarvis, and I are all on the investment advisory committee. And so what we meet every quarter, we present every quarter, and at least the 3 of us internally feel that we would like to have PFM continue as advisors. But I know there's been concern by board members when they saw that the performance was below benchmark at times. And so PFM did send out, Jeff and Floyd sent out a video explaining that, and then also some documentation along with that. So they could, what I would like them to do is come up and just briefly explain, kind of for those who have not seen the video or not familiar, they can explain what has happened and why things have happened and what are these steps that they are taking to resolve those issues going forward. So at this time, I would like to introduce Jeff and Floyd, and they could go up and explain. And then at the end, if you have additional questions, please feel free to ask the question. Gentlemen, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Chair, just, so the information that was presented on the advisors was in an attachment in an email. I don't see it linked in my agenda anywhere. I mean, I downloaded a little myself, but is there anything for board members to be looking at from the materials that were? I don't know what it's attached to.
So this, sorry to interrupt, but at your place, you should have the quarterly report.
Okay.
For the quarter ending September.
So I can respond.
Yeah, 'cause there were a number of things that PFM gave us, right? But it was, I'm looking to see if it's on the agenda somewhere so it can be viewed, and it's not.
And I can't respond to that, but as part of the committee, one of my concerns was they present us with something that shows red. And I don't have any context to understand exactly what that means, or should we be concerned, or is that industry wide, any of those things. So one of my requests was, can you explain to us and help us understand, what does that mean? Should we be concerned? Is there something that we need to understand? And so I will turn it over to them to respond.
And it is this document, it's this PFM Asset Management LaPierre Technical College supplemental information for the quarter. That's
What
that's,
I wasn't able to open. Right, but there were a number of other things.
yes,
Which
yes.
are not available. Is that what we're saying?
I guess not.
They were in the email that came from the president's office for the, that's where I got this from. It was an attachment on our email that Peter sent out for the meeting.
Yeah.
Typically that information, we don't put in our investment information on the public site or on our agenda for a variety of reasons. We don't want people to know what the public have. It's not what's here, but we don't publish that. Typically, we provide handouts at the board meetings, and the information that was sent to me was for board members to review in advance of this meeting if they were interested, but they can, well, Jeff and Floyd can help provide the information. And if you have, as you have questions, they will help answer your questions.
Just to close the loop on this item, if something is presented to all 9 board members, it is public. Okay, so if something is emailed to all 9 board members, it is a public document. I appreciate the concerns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And the document that the chairman referred to is the kind of, 2-pager, 4-pager with front and cover that you normally receive each quarter, I believe. The other documents that you just held up, those that apparently were emailed to each of you along with a video, that those are important documents that get to the heart of the issue of explaining the recent underperformance. As Jeff Hollow mentioned, we've been managing the FCC Spectrum Trust funds and the OPEB dollars since 2019, about 3.5 years, and you hired us, in multiple reasons, but one, we have a long history of outperforming our benchmarks over the long term. And these are, long-term dollars that you're going to have around for a long time. So, it's really, best to think about the long-term performance over business cycles. So in the first couple of years, the performance was good, outperforming. But in 2022 and 2023, we had some underperformance for a couple of reasons that Floyd Simpson will explain and was explained in some of this additional information that was received. But the goal is to and we made some changes as well to some of the how we manage the portfolio and some of the committees that make decisions on the investment portfolios. So there's a number of factors, and you have an alternative portfolio of investments as well, targeted to 20% of that. And that has taken time, as we knew it would, to roll out those alternative investments. And their returns also, it takes a while for those to roll out and the returns to actually factor into the performance. So they lag the market.
So for the benefit of our newer members of the board, would you just tell them what alternative investments means?
Yeah.
Please.
Can I back up a second?
Sure.
Can you also define benchmark? So you talk about not underperforming compared to benchmark. Can you tell us what that means?
Right. The benchmark, the benchmark is, and we can get to your specific benchmark if that would be helpful without getting too detailed. Let me just.
So the benchmark is how do you compare your performance in regards to each individual bucket? That's what your benchmark is. So that's set by your investment policy statement, and then your benchmark is through there. You have a certain amount of equities, a certain amount of fixed income, and then a certain amount of alternatives. Alternatives are essentially non-public equities or bonds that you invest in that they're not priced on a daily basis. They're priced usually once or twice a year. Now it's about twice a year. And, you have to access those a different way because it's essentially just like buying I would probably say buying an auto lot. And that's, it's not you buying Ford stock, it's you buying an auto lot. So those are the two differences.
Yeah, for your Spectrum Trust, the larger portfolio, it's an 80-20 portfolio, 80% stocks, 20% bonds, fixed income portfolio. So that's the major asset allocation or benchmark. It can be further broken down into a certain segment of US domestic stocks, international stocks, alternatives, etc. So that's the benchmark is kind of the market, if you will, and we strive to outperform the benchmark by making wise choices. And so over recent history, that 2023 was a tough year. A lot of investment managers underperformed markets. We were one of them, and we're here to explain some of those decisions that didn't work out as well and why, and some of the changes we made. So let me turn over to Floyd.
Thank you, Jeff. So 2022 was a very strange year. 2022, you had equities and bonds, essentially correlations, everything moving together, but correlations ended up going to almost one. So it didn't matter if you were in equities or bonds, both were going down. They were going down about the same amount. Now within there were only a couple places where you could quote unquote be able to eke out a very positive performance or better performance than the overall market. Those places were cash, the Brazilian real currency. You also had within there the Mexican peso currency and alternatives. Your portfolio has been ramping up alternatives. That was a plus. The minus is that you still have a fair amount within there. And then within there, a lot of the areas that did really well were skewed to oil, energy. Oil did very well last year. Oil was increasing. If we think about our pockets, that's why we had to pay a lot more at the gas tank. And that's an area that a lot of the managers, especially within the international side, they just didn't have a significant exposure to. It's a smaller area within the benchmark. It did very well, but a lot of your managers are skewed to areas that have done historically well, and even currently have year to date been doing very well. Thus, information technology. So think about your Apples, your Googles, your Microsofts. Also think about your healthcare and consumer discretionary type of companies. So things that you spend on a daily basis, restaurants, and those type of companies. This year, for March 2023, we actually start off the year fairly good. So January and February were really good months. March, if you looked at the stock performance today, you would never know that March was really a down period. March was a time that I'm pretty sure everybody in here probably has either heard or remembers Silicon Valley Bank going under. You also had Signature Bank going under. That essentially impacted a lot of the smaller companies. And within that time frame, right before that happened, we were actually tilting the portfolio to the smaller and mid companies on the domestic side. So that had a negative impact on the portfolio. We did actually end up exiting those positions within the month of May, put that money back into your larger companies, and that has been positive for that portion of your portfolio going forward.
So those are the two big reasons for the underperformance in the last 18 months. You want to talk about some of the changes that we've made?
Changes made within your international portfolio. One of the things we did realize, I talked about energy, that was an area that we didn't have exposure to. We looked at both the managers and we felt that we needed a manager really that could be able to add that energy exposure that was a little bit more opportunistic. We did that. That's actually your Goldman Sachs GQG Partners International Opportunities Fund. So that was one thing. Then the second thing would be structurally. Structurally, we realized that when you see that level of performance, especially underperformance, you need to look at your process from the beginning to end and look and say, okay, there's some changes that need to be made. We added 2 subcommittees. We added one subcommittee that focused just on the individual managers and another subcommittee that focuses on your asset allocation. So how much you should put into equities, how much you should put into bonds, and how much you should put into alternatives. So if you think about that investment decision process, separating that two, and really more having people that are purely focused on why that decision is being made, what needs to be done, and then even on top of that, utilizing my group, which is the strategies group, to have a lot more insights and peeling back the onion on all of the managers beneath the scene, so that we really have, I would say, a more micro in-depth view on what's going on with each and everything, and making sure that we check those theses of all of our analysts so that we know what's going on. We have a better anticipation of the portfolio. And then we also know, is this somebody that we still want to stay with or we want to exit? So that's the type of work we have been doing within the past 6 months within your portfolio. It's been positive with the addition of GQG. They actually had exposure to energy, which did well during the summer for you. If I thought also about your portfolio, just looking at some of those changes, getting back to equities, fixed equities, we did really well within equities, having that slight tilt over. So I think those are some of the plays that you have seen it within your portfolio to help it out and to move better going forward.
So in summary, we've made some changes. We believe that those changes will be beneficial, and they're starting to pay dividends. And going forward, we're very optimistic about our ability to outperform the market as we typically have done, and also as these alternative investments season and come into play more, that will benefit the portfolio. So we are expecting to return to outperforming the benchmark over the long run. And 3.5 years sounds like a long time, but it's it's in the world of investing, it's not a market cycle. So we would like the opportunity to continue to see the fruits of the portfolio build out through the alternative portfolio, and continue to be your investment manager for these 2 portfolios. and happy to take any questions.
I have questions. Are you, and I haven't looked, I haven't seen any of the individual investments. Are these ETFs? Are these mutual funds?
Both.
Okay. Explain a little bit more of these alternatives. Are you talking covered call ETFs? Are you talking?
So your alternatives are private equity, private debt, and real estate. So that would be essentially buying unit development properties across the United States. That'll also be buying smaller companies that are not publicly listed. That will be going to be publicly listed. And last but not least, that will also be lending to companies, both public and private companies, through a non-banking channel. Since banks have started to lend less, that's an area that has become a focal point.
And you're buying these individually on your own?
No, we're investing we're doing that through the investment utilization of a manager.
Okay.
So just like your ETFs and mutual funds, where you're essentially trying to find the best manager, especially mutual funds, it's the same exact thing with your alternatives.
Yeah, and yeah, this information is provided to the investment committee on a quarterly basis, and some of the names, just Morgan Stanley Prime Property Fund is one of the alternatives. Common Fund, Global Private Equity. I mean, I could go on, but happy to provide more detail. But we are a manager of managers. We're not picking stocks. We're not picking alternative, and we're not picking 1 to 4 family. We're hiring people that focus specifically on that to do those. We're managing the asset classes.
Okay. So we have a list of these investments somewhere, or?
There were items on an attachment.
Yep.
To an email you received.
May I ask a question? So in the last 3.5 years that you've been managing our portfolios, when was aside from the 6 months ago, when was last time that you did a review?
Or
Because
the staff.
Right, because you did mention that, I mean,
We do the quarterly.
We do a quarterly
We
review,
meet
yeah.
with Jeff and Eva and Director Cases on that committee.
no, with us, review with your team, with the people that you manage to make sure that they are. Because you said you meet and you got a new group of people 6 months ago, of managers.
So we have a strategies team. That's the team I'm part of. We actually meet with our manager research team on a weekly basis. That also includes meeting with the manager, along with meeting with the individual analyst on what's going on, digging more deep down into their problems. For the committees, our committees meet at minimum once a month. I can tell you the portfolio construction committee is meeting 2 times a month. That manager research committee is also meeting 2 times a month. And then the investment committee meets at minimum 1 time a month.
And they're reviewing our account.
Yes.
Yeah, and your account, the managers, and it's really an ongoing basis, and it's a
Okay,
ongoing
the only
review.
reason I ask is because you specifically mentioned 6 months ago, we reviewed this. So,
6 months ago, we reviewed our process.
And made some changes, some tweaks to the process. The process, it was always in place and was always ongoing, but yeah, the changes that Floyd referred to were.
and going forward, then if we were to go with you again, how often are you going to review your processes to make sure that we are actually meeting our targets or benchmarks?
That would actually be just what I just mentioned. It would be the portfolio construction committee 2 times a month. It would be the manager selection committee 2 times a month. It would be strategy with the individual analysts and the head of research once a week, and then investment committee.
So when you're meeting this often, what kind of recommendations that you're bringing to our committees to make sure that we're not losing money at the rate that we are?
So, we would say we bring them as necessary and appropriate. So we're not making a change on a daily basis. We're looking at it saying, is this in line with our expectation? Is this not? We're also looking at it saying, okay, we want to spend a little bit more time on these individual managers. We do bring this up, whether it's quarterly or ad hoc, with the team here, but we don't try to make a change every time, because we know that that's similar to engineering. We just don't want to tinker with a portfolio on a consistent basis. That's not going to, and it's not going to add value to do that.
Yeah, managers mean, there's probably, just to give you a feel, there's probably 25 different managers and over the course of a year, you know, we're taking out 2 or 3 and adding 2 or 3 in on an ongoing basis. And it's your account is looked at individually. But these managers, if we like them, we're utilizing them in, you know, other entities as well that are similar, have similar investment objectives to yours.
And to your point, the biggest thing that we focus on is have our expectations for that manager change or the allocation in comparison to what's changed in the market. So when we're meeting consistently, it's to think about what are some of the changes going on. For instance, how does Israel impact what's going on in Israel in that area of the region impact your portfolio? So those are things that we're talking about and we're digging into. And that's, to your point, is why we're consistently meeting at that regular amount, because we know that it's changing a lot more than it has in the past. And we need to ensure that we talk about that on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
I have a question about the contract that we're being asked to approve. It's described as a 3-year contract with the possibility of 4 additional 1-year extensions. Is that the form of contract that we have in place now that's coming to an end? What I'm really getting at is, do we have to vote on a 3-year new contract, or is it possible for us to vote on a 1-year extension instead at this point in time?
We just did, so if you think about it, the 16 technical colleges, they have a purchasing consortium. And what they did is they did they call it an RFP, request for bid. And there were 4 4 entities that submitted. 1 was rejected, but 3 were accepted. And you know, so that's the process. And what they want to do is get all the technical colleges on the same cycle so that when they do this again, they can compete. And it's great to have the investor community compete for rates. And so that it'll probably come up. I'm not sure if it'll be 3 years from now, but they're trying to get all the technical colleges on the same cycle. So that's why they're doing this at this time.
I'll just add to your point that you might be getting at. The contract or the current contract we have or in the future would have it's either a 30-day or a 60-day out clause if you're, you know, not happy with us in the future or want to make a change. So that's always a part of the contract.
Director Case?
So can you just help myself and the rest of the board, I don't want to speak for everybody, understand? I know when I do my personal investments, right, I do a risk assessment and my financial advisor makes decisions based on what I have said is my risk tolerance.
Right.
Can you just help us understand how much of the decisions that you've talked about and the benchmarks and all of those things are based on what we dictated as our risk tolerance versus what you guys are recommending, and how that, help me understand how that works?
Yeah, I'll start and then you can jump in. But and that's a good point. And is your portfolio is again 80% equities, essentially 20% fixed income for the FCC Spectrum Trust, and then I believe 75-25 for the OPEB portfolio, which is a more risky portfolio than let's say average. I'll say the average OPEB portfolio that we manage might be a 65-35. Some are 60-40, 60% stocks. Stocks are less volatile than bonds. And when this was originally, this portfolio was put in place, and when we took over the portfolio, there was a discussion about what was the right overall asset allocation mix, that 80% stocks, 20% bonds. So and it's something we didn't even mention, but you know, when you have a portfolio that's more risky, you would expect more volatility like we've seen. So, more upside when things are working well, but when things aren't. So, and that's what's being reflected a little bit in the portfolio. The downside's a little more, but in the long run, an 80-20 portfolio would, over a 5, 7, 10-year period would outperform a 60-40 portfolio. So
Your risk return is set through your investment policy statement, which is done through the board, done through the parameters that were signed. So that actually sets the roadmap for us in order to be able to invest in all the different asset classes, equities, fixed income, and alternatives.
So do we have an opportunity to change that if we feel like that's not the right risk?
certainly do. Yeah.
So I just want to be clear on they're doing what we told them to do versus they're making decisions on our behalf.
So for comparison purposes, are the benchmarks based on the same allocations that we've asked you to adhere to, or are
Yes, they
those
are.
different?
No,
Right.
they're
They're the
based on
same.
those allocations.
Yeah.
I think so.
Other question? Director Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you walk us through in both portfolios, in the performance summary, it talks about the dollar return. And can you talk about the differences in the dollar return from inception to quarter ended September?
Yes, so your quarter ended just is from 6/30/2023 to 9/30/2023, and that's reflective of the market. So for instance, bonds were down 3%, stocks were down 3%. So your portfolio essentially within your net cash flow and your dollar return is reflecting what you need to withdraw from the portfolio. That's your net cash flow, along with if the markets were down, you're going to have a negative return within that dollar return.
Let me just stop you for a second. Again, we have 6 board members who have not really been through this before, so I want to make sure you understand. The net cash flow is the amount of money that we withdrew in order to pay for things we wanted to buy. That's not a loss in the marketplace.
Spend, yeah.
It's
Correct.
spent, right? So we are limited to, I think the number is 4%
Difference.
of the asset value on an annual basis, and that turned out to be $4.8 million this year. So the dollar return, in contrast, is a loss in value of the investments, correct?
But that was for the
For
quarter.
that
Quarter.
right?
Yes, because
Right.
stocks
Right.
were down and bonds were down.
Right, so that's my question, Mr. Chair. And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at inception to end of quarter. And I see a great difference, and I'm wondering, maybe I'm just not wise enough. However, I don't know if there is if we see a difference between quarter 2 and quarter 3.
Well, you're looking at the negative 2.7 million in red
Yes.
there, and then are you comparing it to the 33 next
Yes.
to it? Okay, so the negative 2.7 million, it's a great question, is just for the 90-day period, which is the quarter. So it's July, August, September. We're looking at the beginning market value of 102 million, and aside from the expenditure of 4.8 million, the portfolio, because stocks and bonds were down, as Floyd said, down 3%, wound up at 95 million. So that was just for the quarter. But on the right-hand side, that's the since inception, going back to actually 2017, before we took over the portfolio. So this portfolio, there was a prior manager before us in 17 and 18, but the portfolio has earned $33 million during, it's up over the longer term period. It's just down over the 90-day period, which was July, August, and September. When we're talking about a quarter, it's literally just that quarter.
And this is due to bank closures, market, what's happening in Israel and Gaza.
So
I
yeah,
haven't heard those mentioned.
so third quarter was really more. You really more had inflation tick up a little bit. People concerned about interest rates going to rise. You did have the conflict, the Israel conflict. So you had a lot of that baked within last quarter. But again, I think it's kind of hard because the quarter portions are the ones that are very volatile. They go up and down. You really want to see it over a longer time frame. because a longer time frame gives you a better view.
But the overall markets were down. So if we, the simplest benchmark that everyone hears is either the Dow Industrials or the S&P 500. That was down. Those both were down about 3% during that quarter for some of the items that you met, some of the macroeconomic issues that affected the markets. And that's reflected in the percentages there on the left side, 2.9 versus 2.8. So just we were 9/100% behind the market during the quarter, essentially in line with the benchmark for the quarter.
So you mentioned the Dow as a comparison. I know that's not what we're doing here, but
Right.
it just reached all-time highs
Yeah.
in the fourth quarter. This data does not reflect anything about the fourth quarter. Are we in an upward trend now?
Upward trend. Domestic equities, you're about in line. International equities, you're ahead. Fixed income, you are ahead.
Of the benchmark, but the markets,
overall
are
overall
Yeah.
up. You have
Yeah.
US markets up 9%, international markets up about 7-8%, and then fixed income is up 3% plus.
That's just for the quarter.
For the quarter.
For the quarter so far. So for sitting here in the middle of 75 days of this quarter, but yeah, so. Certainly erasing these losses that you're seeing here for the third quarter. Yeah, Director Baker.
Yeah, and I'm just doing a little sort of back of my napkin sort of calculations, but
Yeah.
if the beginning market value is about 85 million, that there was about 6 million cash flow, there was about, so that's a negative, so now I'm down to about 79 million. Dollar return was about 33 million, that should take me up to about 112 million, but I have 95 million as my ending market value. We lost a lot more than just the 3 million in the last quarter, correct?
No,
Did
so
I do something wrong there?
within here, A433,
I was just I'm looking at the since inception, since
Right.
2017.
I believe there's more net cash flow spend. You're right, that does not reconcile.
Right, I mean, that's a
so
lot of losses, and I mean, we know that we had losses not just in this quarter, because we had this conversation
Right.
at the last time we saw this report. So we know there've been other losses, but the numbers aren't quite making sense to me.
Yeah, I believe that net cash flow since inception is larger.
right.
And it's larger than the
Believe, but
6 million.
But we don't know what it is.
Yeah, don't have
We can
it
confirm that number.
at the fingertips, but we can correct that.
Yeah, I thought there were other years when we took $4 million out, right?
Right.
So that number doesn't make sense to me either.
Right.
But I want to circle back if I could. Dr. Najib, are you raising your hand? Yeah, I see it. I'm sorry. I'll be back to you in just one second. I want to go back to the question I asked before about the structure of the contract. Jeff, your comments were about how as a group, we're trying to get all the colleges on the same schedule so that requests for proposal can be done at the same time. My question is, do we want to do that here? And do we have, given the structure of the first contract, do we have the option of doing a 1-year renewal now, a 1-year renewal the year after that, a 1-year renewal after that, which gets us back on track, but gives us the opportunity to see if we can actually correct the errors that were made here?
Just point of order. I'm not sure if we should be discussing that in the agenda item on purchasing on the contract.
Well, we're being asked to approve the contract, and I'm asking whether there's an alternative to approving the contract in order to decide whether to approve the contract.
I'm just, I guess I was just questioning whether that particular discussion needs to happen in the procurement report rather than.
As a result, can I just maybe interject this, as a result of the RFP that was done, the rates came down 16%.
What rates?
The fees,
It's in
the fees
the-
that we,
Right.
there was a benefit, there definitely was a benefit for doing that and having this competitive process.
Okay. And I'm still not getting an answer to my question, which is, do we have the option in this contractual situation of doing 1-year renewals?
We can. We could, but we'd pay the higher fees on the previous, if we continue on the previous contract. But as Jeff mentioned, if we are unhappy in the next year, we have a 90-day notice and say, we no longer want to work with you. So there's always the option of getting out. We don't have to wait 3 years. We can get out if we're not happy with the results.
Mhm.
We're not
Mhm.
continuing to move in the direction that we expect our advisors to move.
Okay. I promised Dr. Najib I'd come back to him next. Dr. Najib?
Yeah. I just want to clarify the drop is significant from 13% positive to 14%, more than 14% negative. So if you're checking every quarter, so why the corrective action plan wasn't started earlier? So you have the 2022 and 2023, at least 6 to 8 quarters. We could have caught it ahead of time and put a corrective action plan sooner than now.
Fair point, and fair question. I think, if you're looking at it, one thing I mentioned for 2023 was the fact that we did do the small and mid cap, so that was actually a headwind for the first quarter within there. So that wasn't so much per se in that portion of comment, but that's just something that happened within the market that impacted your portfolio. We don't control that portion of Silicon Valley that we did not think, even though we didn't think the banking sector was that it has that many issues, and it still doesn't. The market said at that point in time, and that's just something right there. In regards to the fixes that you mentioned, we monitored, we looked at that throughout the year. But that's one of the things to where we started digging deeper, and it wasn't just something that we did a deep dive yesterday. We've been doing actually a deep dive since the beginning of the year. I've been peeling back the onion, asking more and more questions, getting down to the individual security level on expectations, understanding, making sure things line up, doing a lot of back history. So also not just looking at the history that we currently have with the manager, but even going backwards to confirm a lot of things. So it wasn't to where, and we just started looking recently. We actually pulled back data to get a full story along with looking at all the information. So it was more, I'd probably say we looked at, yes, the performance we're not happy about. We understand the managers, we understand the whys behind it. But we took a longer view in looking at everything and kind of making sure that we weren't just doing a knee-jerk reaction, because 1 year was bad. 1 year was bad when everything was bad that 1 year. So we did not want to take the knee-jerk reaction. We wanted to look at the full we want to look at their full history and make sure we had a good understanding of what that meant.
Thank you.
Director Baker?
Okay, so as long as it's okay to talk about it here. So I've heard the 16% reduction because of the sort of agreement with the entire Tech College Consortium, correct? So I'm not interested in a 1 year extension of our current agreement. I'm just wondering, can we do a 1 year contract on the new terms with a 2 year extension after the board reviews the first year? That would be.
Well, you can achieve the same thing by Mr. Hollow's comment that we're unhappy with them at the end of 9 months or a year. We can give them 90 days notice of termination.
I think it's 30 or 60, honestly.
Okay.
It's even shorter, but
It's relatively short. I think we can discuss that specifically
Okay.
when we get to
Okay,
that.
then also just to follow up, it says there's an annual minimum fee of 20,000 and then it has several bullet points. So what has been our annual fee up till this point?
it's been more than at your assets level. It's the minimum fee does not come into play. So that would not come into play.
Okay, so what is ours?
Your current fee is 19 basis points. That's 19/100ths of a percent, and coming down to 16 basis points is the 16% savings. So I'm just getting my calculator out here. So on roughly 100. $45 million portfolio. Times 0.0019. That's 275,000
Thank you.
per
But
annual per year.
But I think that numbers, because that includes market appreciation.
Mhm.
So when it was lower, it wasn't that amount. Because it's done on the assets. So if it was 100,000, for that period, it was done on that. So it changes as if the market goes lower, that fee amount that you pay goes lower.
When is that fee set, though? Is it continuously revised? Is it monthly? Is it once a year?
It's based on the basis point cost is fixed and it's based on market value. So it's really
I'm
like
asking-
daily market value. So we'll take a look at
It's set within your contract.
yeah, but it's within, essentially, we look at the average within the quarter or month, depending upon if it's billed monthly or quarterly. And so it's looked at the market
So let's look
value.
at once per billing period.
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
and that's
Yeah.
monthly?
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
correct case.
So we've talked about the fees, we talked about investments, all of those things. If we choose to adjust our risk portfolio, I personally am much more risk averse. I like to keep my money. I don't want to lose any of it. If we were to choose to lower the risk on our portfolio, what does that look like? So if we're saying we're not happy with the risk we currently take, we would prefer to have less risk and more steady, lower income, what would that look like? And what does that look like within our agreement?
So one thing to think about, what it would mean would be you'll probably take money from alternatives into either equities or fixed income. But you also have a 4% hurdle, which you need to grow capital. So 4% plus 1.5% plus another 2% for inflation. So you really need to have a return of at least somewhere in the neighborhood of 6.5 to 7%. In order to hit the number that you really want to hit, because inflation costs, you got to factor that in. Your minimum spend of 4%. So you want to be able to grow it as opposed to kind of saying, I'm just keeping it steady. Because other than that, you're not trying to grow the corpus. You're not trying to grow the main body of the account.
So to answer my question, we could do that at any point if we
Right,
decided we
but
wanted
yeah,
to.
and how we would do that would be at like the finance committee, investment
Yep,
committee
yep.
that you participate in quarterly. We can do it whenever the group, whoever wants to get together to have an ad hoc investment committee meeting. And we would present you the various options and the probabilities of meeting that return hurdle and what that would look like and the risk return trade-offs for that. So happy to do that. And we essentially did that at the beginning of the engagement with a different group of, I think I remember Mark being on the committee possibly or shortly thereafter. So that was, we could do that again whenever it pleases the committee.
May I ask one quick question?
Sure, Director Mendia Reynolds.
Thank you. How often then are we reviewing that risk? Just whenever we request it? So like we originally, when we brought you on board, we review that and then it hasn't happened ever since.
Well, the portfolio is reviewed each quarter by staff in the investment committee that includes, board members from time to time.
So if they don't make a suggestion to us, adjust the risk, it just,
We-
you don't make a suggestion. You don't bring us that option, obviously.
Right, we go ahead.
So we do talk about what staff say, do we need to make any changes to your portfolio on a yearly basis? Doing on a quarter to quarter, you just.
Right, no.
But on a yearly basis, hey, staff, everything okay? Do we need to make some changes based off of what's going on either with your draw, that 4%? Do you have anything going on with the balance sheet here at the school that we need to account for? So we do bring that up on a yearly basis. We do, when those numbers come up, we look at the numbers and saying, hey, these work, these don't work. So that's done on a yearly basis.
Okay, thank you.
Director Burris.
So my question is, if you guys knew months ago that there were issues and we didn't come to you guys, why didn't you guys come to us?
In regards to,
Like the issues of you guys not meeting your benchmarks.
we,
So let us know, like, hey, maybe you want to rethink changing your investment strategy.
we've done that on a quarterly basis with the staff. We've updated the staff on a quarterly basis about,
And you're part of the committee.
Just for the last 2 quarters, yes.
Okay.
So I think, can I comment?
Sure.
So I think based on our risk portfolio, we don't necessarily expect to see
Huge return.
huge returns every quarter, right? It's a long-term strategy. And so based on the strategy that was set, it's not unexpected to see ups and downs every quarter. So as an individual board member representing that or hearing that, I don't know that there's a process in place for me to come back, right? And or would I necessarily recommend that on a quarter by quarter based on our risk portfolio?
But I think we did establish that the benchmarks use a similar risk.
Right, but not
portfolio. So-
quarter by quarter, right?
No,
It's
no,
long
no,
term.
long
And,
term.
and so that's the thing. Do we react quarter by quarter
No,
when we're playing a long-term game?
Sure. But just on the whole thing, do we change our risk
Correct.
or whatever?
And
The
that's-
benchmarks
Right.
we've been using are benchmarks that are with the same risk.
Yeah.
Assessment, assumptions. Okay.
So I guess my question was basically because if we're going to renew the contract and we're thinking about how long we're going to do that for, we should be also looking at long term, because this
Yeah.
says like 4 years
Yep.
to kind of be stuck in this. So I would like for us to get like more information prior to that. And if we're going to do a long-term contract, that we should have some type of updates. I don't want to come back in 2 years from now and they're like, okay, well, it's gone down again. Like, I would like someone to come tell me when there is some type of risk.
That happens
If that
quarterly.
makes sense.
We, to the OPEB, and I don't remember what the full name of it is, but to our committee, to which Director Case is currently assigned, that's when those communications occur. So we're getting information on that basis. The CFO, Jeff Hollow, is also in on that committee. I've forgotten who else is on the committee.
Keith, our controller, Sue Jarvis, our cash manager.
Right. So that information does come. You're welcome to join those committee meetings. If you would like to hear it directly and ask questions along the way. We adopted a policy that said we want to adopt this risk profile.
Right.
And the alternatives were authorized, I think, for the first time with the Spectrum Fund as opposed to the OPEB fund. Maybe the OPEB fund has followed into that path because we were looking to achieve better results. And the theory is that the risk reward that you pick, the risk profile that you pick, has 2 consequences. One is if you make the right individual choices along the way, the likelihood of higher earnings is there. Whereas if you take the more conservative approach, their upper maximum is probably less. Now, that also means there's more volatility. Things go up and down more frequently, more quickly, which is why you need to have the longer term view of it. A quarter's performance is, in my experience at least, seldom the basis for a hire or fire decision of an investment company or investment managers. You want to look at their longer term performance. My concern is that the long-term performance vis-a-vis the benchmark has been negative. That is, you're not meeting the benchmarks over the 3-year time. And so when you say, as the explanations for the last quarter, all these things were happening in the marketplace, things happen in the marketplace all the time, and they happen to everyone. And so the question then becomes, why did the people in the benchmark do better? Did they address the issue sooner? Is this just a statistical anomaly? Why weren't you up at least as high as the benchmark?
Well, some of our managers are overweighted to other areas that didn't do as well in the benchmark. So your benchmark holds information technology. So that's the area this year that's doing really well. And you're seeing that within that international side of your portfolio. Last year, they were overweight information technology. That's a sector that did not do well. That was actually one of the worst performing sectors. They're looking at it over more of a 3-year cycle, 4 to 5, not a 1-year cycle. So, when a year that energy does well, which is not known for being a quote unquote area of consistent outperformance, this is going to cause a lot of active managers to actually lag the benchmark. So you did have that within 2022. I think, your point about performance is fair. But I think, when you look at the totality, if you look at 2020 and 2021, those were years that not only you outperformed, but if you looked at some of your peers, you were actually in that top quartile to even closer to that top teams for those 2 periods. It was honestly just 2022 that has been the significant outlier that has been the drag on returns.
Anything else on this part of the discussion? That is, we're going to vote on the procurement report later, but is there any other information we want to gather right here? Director Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that Mr. Hollow has spoken to this to a certain degree, but you're saying that there is a punishment financially for not renewing or renewing at a certain rate or at a certain level, vis-a-vis the 30 to 60 day window we could have to pull out at some later date. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think what you're saying is if we take the new contract that was presented to us as a result of the RFP, we're in a better, our fees are lower. They're really focused on making adjustments, and they've convinced me that they've improved their process. Their customer service is excellent. Their historical rate of return overall, and there are several schools that have used them. And in fact, the healthcare consortium is elected to use them this time around. So with all that being said, and like right now, I don't know what did the quarter end up with the total return. I think I looked at the other day, I looked at the FCC balance of that trust. It's over $102 million right now. So things are moving in the right direction. As the market's going up, we're seeing our investments are going up, and the OPEB trust was over $52 million. So our investments are significantly higher compared to what the September quarter end was. With all that information, obviously you can decide what you would like to do, but I think adjustments have been made, fees are lowered, and the hope is that this will continue to move in the right direction. If not, we have the 30, 60, whatever, how many days to choose to select another investment advisor.
Let me ask a clarifying question here.
Sure.
I think he missed one part of your question. As I understand it, if we sign on to this now, we would benefit from the reduced fees. That does not affect our ability to decide on whatever it is, 60 days or 30 days or 90 days notice that we want to end the contract. So we get that benefit beginning now and for however long that's in place under the terms of what they've offered the group as a whole. Okay. If we say, no, we're not going to renew the contract on these terms that are being offered, then we would have the same rate structure we have in place now. We would not get that benefit. So I think the only way to get that benefit right now, unless we engage in a long negotiation process, is we would not certainly automatically get that benefit now. Did that answer your question?
Yes. And I want to thank Mr. Hollow for his advocacy. However, I specifically want to know, because if because I hear this safety net of 30 to 60 days being given out. And I think too much to your point, Mr. Chair, 30 to 60 days is not enough time to determine if something has gone wrong or gone awry, or if we need to change our position. I would much rather have a safety net, if you will, of 1 year.
Well, I think you're misinterpreting. It's not that we only have 30 or 60 days to decide whether to do it. It's that we can give notice at any
Right.
point.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's what we
You can give
we
notice
have.
after a year.
I'm using safety net as like, 30 to 60 days to say, okay, we want out. And am I getting that wrong?
No. Yeah, yes,
Okay.
you're getting that wrong. You
Okay.
can make the decision at any time, but you have to give them 30 or 60 days notice before it takes effect.
Okay. Okay.
So I think it is what you're saying you want.
Okay.
So yeah, a year down the road, 6 months, a year, 18 months, you can say you want to make a change and then, as it, to not create any hardship with, someone else coming in, if that was your decision, then you could do that within whatever time frame. It could be as quick as 30 or 60 days if you wanted to, but it could be whatever you want.
Okay.
Director Baker.
So I just want to be clear, because there's some statements that are being made that I don't see anything written here that backs them up. And so if we said, no, we'd like a 1-year contract, because I think there's an incentivization built into that we'd like a 1-year contract that we review at the end of 1 year and then potentially renew for 2 more years, so that there is a 3-year agreement there, at the end of which we could potentially roll that over for another year. But if we did that, we would not benefit from the 16% reduction. Is that said somewhere that we only can do it on these terms?
Well, the RFP resulted in investment advisors competing, so the fees came down. So I would think that if we take advantage of what the consortium went through to help us bring the fees down, we would take advantage of it. And as mentioned, several times, if at any point we feel uncomfortable or unhappy with the results, it's not something where you flip a light switch and all of a sudden you go to a different investment advisor. There's a cost associated with doing that, because you're selling new investment advisor wants to put their own investments in place. So, and right now we're in a period of time when the market's going up, and my feeling is if we disrupt this opportunity that we're in right now, we'll suffer. The college will suffer on a return that we could experience, because they're making tweaks, not major adjustments. If we went to a different advisor, it would be a major change.
Director Burrows.
At any point during the contract, are we able to reestablish? I think Erica asked this already, but I just want to.
The risk profile?
Yes.
Yes.
We're able to do it at any point.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we need to have more visibility to that as a board, because I think, and this is my rudimentary, non-financial commentary, but they're investing based on what we tell them to do, right? If we want them to go in a different direction, that's our call.
Which is what I was
Right,
trying to
yeah.
ask
You
earlier.
can't switch, you can't turn on a dime.
Right.
Because you have to sell
So,
things
yes,
and,
yes,
but yes,
right. So that's what I was getting at. And I think I was trying to beat around my question a little bit, like beat around the bush with it. But when there was concern over that 2-year period, I just wanted to know why you guys didn't come to us and just say, maybe you want to change that.
I think it hasn't been 2 years really, and that's why I'm more focused. If I looked at your performance, that underperformance comes from 2022. So it's not so much the 2 years. And yes, we've underperformed 2 years, but really more where's the main focus been? It's really been in that 2022 time period. So even when we were having the underperformance, we talked through the underperformance while we're going through it, what was going on, what was our thoughts behind it with the team on a quarterly basis. We recommended, we would do changes as necessary. There were times that it's not shown within your portfolio, but there were times that you actually did have exposure to commodities, which did help the portfolio a little bit during 2022, but then it did not help the portfolio for the whole year. So there were some things in there that we talked about that did help, did not help, that we went through on a quarterly basis and discussed. But overall, your overall allocation, changing it for 1 year, for instance, if we would have changed it for based off of last year and gone super conservative, you would have missed within your portfolio essentially between 70 and 80% of your portfolio. You would have missed a difference of 3% for bonds, 10% for equities. You would have missed that. And so that's where that's where the IPS kind of helps the roadmaps. You set it once, you do slight adjustments as necessary. But we do those small tweaks, and we do talk about it on a quarterly basis with the team.
I'm just
a second. Anything else?
No, I was good.
Okay,
I think
Director
my-
Baker.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize this one more time. I'm not opposed to us re-examining what our risk is.
Right.
Within the risk that we were assuming, that's who our benchmarks are. So we were underperforming other funds with the same risk. It wasn't that we were just underperforming in general. We were underperforming others who had the same risk assumptions that we had. Okay, now we can change them, and I think we should look at them and we
Right.
should see, are we doing what we want to be doing? But the underperformance is a question, it's an apples and apples.
Just a question
Thanks for that.
from, I think, Jeff Hollow. Do we have a policy in place to revisit that question of risk analysis on some periodic basis? Or is it just, do we have that policy in place now?
I think the policy's in place based on a long-term expected return.
Yeah.
And so we'd have to revisit the policy that's out there.
We can look at that too and see if we want to just force ourselves to ask the question more frequently.
Yeah, that's a common element of IPS investment policy statement that said, this policy, it may say it in there, to say this policy should be reviewed by the committee or the board on an annual basis.
Yeah, so one of the things we're trying to do is to make sure that all such things are on our forward-looking calendar. And I'm not sure that one is,
No,
so
I
we
don't
could
know what it
probably add that.
And you get access to those statements.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can share, if everybody wants to attend, they're welcome to. I feel like when we have the meetings, they're very forthcoming in their recommendations. And so I'm happy to share that on a more regular basis or bring it to the board for further adjustments. But at the end of the day, they're investing based on what we tell them to do.
For tomorrow.
Just one more thing, Mr. Chairman. You've stated that you're managers of managers, correct?
Yes.
That you're not giving any advice, and even in the disclosure, it says that you do not provide specific advice or specific recommendations on how to operate. However, that 3% and 10%, and if we had gone conservative, this is what would have happened. I don't know if that's a recommendation or not, or just a general statement. Are the managers that you're managing making those decisions?
They make those decisions, and their timeframes vary. A majority of the timeframes are more 3 to 5 years, just because of what moves the market. It usually has longer term trends. So they're looking at the longer term trends versus what's going to be hot next quarter or next month.
Okay. And that's who would engage and would decide what we were investing in, those the managers that you manage.
So we would look at your portfolio, kind of say your parameters. Here's the managers that fit for those parameters based off of what you're looking at. Here's why they fit those parameters within there. And then they go out and they pick stocks based off of how they choose. But we end up choosing them based off of our view of the markets, and your parameters.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda items. I would like to just get a sense of the board as to whether we should entertain a motion to pull this contract and vote on it separately, or
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
I was actually
Okay.
just gonna move that.
all right, is there a motion to withdraw the financial advisor contract from the consent agenda item?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. With the exception of pulling item, I believe it is 1-4 in the procurement report.
Item 1-4,
4D.
4D.
Did I do
1,
it? Well, it's
4D.
item 1, it's part 1, item 4, investment consultant services. for
So
Oh,
it's like
trust.
4D1-4.
There you go.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Still allowing to take it.
I don't think we need a roll call for this. Is there any further discussion about the consent agenda items other than the one item that's been removed? All right, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items other than item 4D14, which is the PFM contract. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Najib, I didn't hear.
I said aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda items are approved. And did you get who made the motion in the second?
I have Lauren Baker making the motion and Bria Burris second.
All right, good.
Well, she gave it to Director.
She gave it
Mindy.
to Alex.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so that leaves us with the PFM contract. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Well, I will second the motion.
Okay, sorry.
Director Burris. All right, discussion. Just raise your hands, please, so I can keep it fair and moving.
Okay, let's start with Dr. Najib.
Okay, Dr. Najib,
The motion is to approve it for 1 year or 3 years.
motion to approve it as a 3-year contract, which includes the term that we can terminate it on. It's either 30 or 60 days notice.
Okay.
You got it.
So we're doing this to be in line with the other technical college systems.
We're doing this to take advantage of the terms that have been negotiated with the group.
So the 16% or?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying as far as the length of the contract though.
It's standard so that everybody can negotiate again as a group at the end of the term.
Does everybody have the same type of funds that we have, like the OPEB and FCC?
No.
Nobody else has the
Nobody
FCC
else
fund.
has it.
So do we think that we need to be in line with them just because of that in general?
Well, the cost.
Reduces the fees because the group as a
It's-
whole is able to negotiate a better fee.
Yeah.
And I believe the thinking is that if individual colleges are not on the same term, then when it comes time to renegotiate as a group, they won't be able to because the terms will be all different.
Yeah.
Director Pence.
But we have most of the money.
That's what I was thinking.
You don't think we have enough negotiating to go back if we need to, or? The fees aren't that bad. That's not really the point. I think they need to be kept on task a little more.
I think that's what I was trying to get to.
Director Case.
Oh, I just.
Sherry.
So I was just asking, it is a consortium contract, so if we decide not to change the terms of the consortium contract, we're entering into an individual contract. And that is the difference, which means we did have to renegotiate the terms and they don't necessarily have to be favorable. when we go to renegotiate.
Director Burris.
From there. So could we entertain or should we entertain continuing under this, but also looking to be separated in the future?
I'm sorry.
So not a part of the consortium finding or RFP, right? It's a part of the, they've
don't-
done the search.
We don't have to be, but we might not get the best rates
Right.
because of that. Because
Benefit.
we're like wholesale,
Right.
but buying wholesale.
So I'm going back to what Director Pitts just said. It's like, so we have
What-
the bulk of the money and we can sort of negotiate on our own.
We can attempt to.
Excuse me 1 second. Sherry, would we have to go through an RFP process to do
We
that?
would have to start over.
Right,
We
so,
would have to start the whole process, which again, I don't know how long this process takes.
right.
To the consortium, but
So that's why I said, let's probably entertain this, entertain this, but also look to the future of maybe saying this isn't the route for us. Cause what it looks like is this like a 7-year contract or 4 years with 3 additional extensions, 1-year
Optional,
extensions.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Director Biggs.
So I do know, I mean, well, yeah, we have the lion's share of the money. There are also 15 other colleges. So if you put them all together, there's a bunch of loose change in there. And we have the FCC, which is a chunk of it. But if you put them all together, there has generally been an advantage. I remember when we started the consortium for healthcare. And even though MATC has always been larger, there is a definite, like you say, we're not, or wholesale. There has always been an advantage
I've
to
been a bit to
purchasing.
doing it together.
I don't know specifically on this, but I know in general, it has helped us. Okay, so, so I want to play ball. Can I, I'm just going to say that clearly a lot of us are uncomfortable.
Mhm.
The performance, I have to, did they leave?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was sort of amazed that people came to plead their case tonight with numbers that weren't correct.
Without
I
knowing
like when you
details
made
of our.
They didn't even know, is it a 30-day or is it a 60? Well, it's 30 or 60, we're not sure. I mean, I was a little concerned that this is $227,000 of our taxpayer money that, and I wasn't seeing, when you come to plead your case, usually you have every piece of information. And I found that disturbing. I really did. And I'm slightly unprofessional. That said, I do know that the consortium has looked at their historic performance. I think they did come to us tonight saying, yeah, we messed up. We were not doing, even within the parameters we gave them, they were not doing as well as others working in the same parameters. And I do think they understand that we're not happy. Because that was my feeling about wanting to do a 1-year contract was not because we couldn't get out of a 3-year, it was to incentivize. It was, you got 1 year to prove something to us. So you're going to really work hard on it. I mean, seriously.
I do think we can convey that message.
Right.
I think we might have done that
I think
already.
we already did.
Can I just comment? So,
Let's-
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I'm just generally sort of, trying to, sort of articulate the frustration that I feel that I think others may be feeling, or I'm sort of sensing some of our, disappointment in that regard.
Director Case.
So I did ask them to come and present to us and help us understand what's been happening. What are they doing? What are the decisions? Help us understand, because we see red on a chart and I don't know that everybody I don't fully understand always what that means. And so help us articulate. In my experience, and this has just been the last 2 quarters, right? I think since whatever it was.
Yeah.
They've been very responsive. I think if we want to take a more active role in directing them, we should do that. And then if they don't step up and meet that, then I think we make a different decision. That's my perspective, having interacted with them and been involved for the last 2
Who
quarters.
was in the committee prior to you?
Nikki.
Okay.
Y'all keep putting the HR people on the finance committees.
And I
This is
was
why
there
we used to have a
before
finance
that, but then somebody else in between as well. Dr. Najib.
Yeah, I'm really unhappy about their performance, especially because they did not inform us early enough. Within 6 months, they should have recognized that and at least attract our attention so we can together can put a better action plan to avoid that kind of result. If it is my money, really, I will not work with them. But the problem now, we have a lot of policy and procedure. If we change them and go somewhere else, it might cost us more, and we won't get this kind of deal. So I'm with going with them and signing 3 contract with this condition that if we're not happy within 30 days or 60 days, we have to leave. But my question: what about if we see, for example, this from now, second or first quarter, that they're still not performing good? Can we give them notice 30 days, for example, before we finish the year, or we have to finish the year and then give them notice?
Anytime.
Anytime.
Anytime. So I'm for it then. If this is a case, it's fine. I can sign, get the lower rate, and they got the message that we're gonna be watching everything they're doing and asking questions, and we'll give them 30 days notice if we're not happy.
Any other discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if you could go into the weeds a little bit about some of the points that you were making with Mr. Hollow, and about the 1 year, kind of your perspective and what your thought process was.
Well, I was looking for a way of giving them a chance. So let me back up one step. A lot of what goes into the success of these investments is whatever the market does, the market does. And you can make really smart decisions based on what you know and what you have to guess about, which is the future, and do really well or do really poorly. That's why we adopt a longer term incentive. Probably the worst investment practice is to make adjustments every month or quarter, because you won't guess right often enough, right? So you want somebody with a long-term perspective, or is operating with a long-term perspective. And in a situation like this, where you have our advisors are hired to pick the right fund managers, it's the right funds invested in the right things, run by people who have a good track record. Those are all the things that go into this. So when I'm looking at, as I said, the $6 million number made no sense to me, because I knew we had withdrawn a lot more money than that. And one of the things I want, Jeff, if we approve this, is I want that chart fixed, and I want to know what those numbers are. And the second thing would be, Shelley, I want you to confirm to us that we do in fact have whatever it is, a 30 or 60 day right under the contract.
You mean Sherry?
I'm sorry. What did I say?
Shelley. Okay.
Shelley.
You can't see. He's still adjusting his surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my eyesight's affected my speech. Sorry. I want to know for sure that we have that right, and they know what it is, so they can either point it out, have them point it out to you. That'd be the fastest way. But you're looking at, they didn't do great last year. Last year was a kind of funky time in the markets. A lot of things didn't go as expected. I did invest in oil stocks at the beginning of last year, so I did that one right, but I won't tell you what I did wrong. If all we're looking at is this big paper loss for the third quarter, the market is on an upswing. It's going to be up for the year as a whole. The numbers we've discussed here sound to me like we have pretty much erased that deficit already in the following 60 or 75 days. And so for me, that quarter really isn't the issue. The issue is long-term, they're not meeting the benchmarks. We got rid of the prior investment advisor because long-term they were not meeting the benchmarks. They were missing them by more than this, as I recall. To my way of looking at this, we should take advantage of the contract fee reduction that's been negotiated, if we can be sure that I would say 6 months from now, if they're not performing to the benchmarks. Maybe it's a year, but 6 months, they need 6 months to get out of this a loss that was in all the markets for the first half of this year. If we can definitely get out in with 30 or 60 or even 90 days notice, 90 seems like a long time, but if it's 30 or 60 days, we need at least that much time to run an RFP process to pick somebody else.
Okay.
So it gives us the safety of being able to say, we're not going to live with this any longer. It gives us at least the short term, and if we stick with them, long-term advantage of the better fees, which we may or may not get from them. And I don't know if we would. I simply can't say. I don't know them well enough for their history with this. Part of what they are doing when they give the consortium that concession is they are looking at what kinds of fee concessions they can get from the managers they're hiring based on the dollar value that they're investing with them. So if we take, I don't know what the numbers are here, but to Director Pence's point, if our two funds are 40% of the total consortium,
yeah,
I have no idea if that's the right number.
Yeah,
that's a big chunk to take out of their ability to negotiate with the managers they're hiring.
right. Yeah.
So they might not be able financially, economically to give us the same discount, even though we're a relatively large part of this. And it might, I suppose, it might undermine the consortium's ability to get it too.
Yeah. That's why I would recommend that we not leave the consortium, because it will make it difficult for the other colleges. Not having us there. And because of like, oh, well, your big fish is kind of gone. So, you know, there's nothing for us to really, you know, want to throw a hook on, if you will.
So why don't we
the right
put,
analogy.
I would suggest that we put on the February board calendar a performance review. See how they're doing.
The year-end statement
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And we can decide about the future.
yeah, so I think we can take a more active or more present role in understanding what's happening on a quarter basis, understanding that we're not going to make quarter decisions, right?
Right.
But
That's
Jeff
true.
and then Ava, after Jeff retires, and I can take that on to make sure we bring it to the board, and certainly can share the committee meetings if anybody wants to attend and hear firsthand, and we can certainly have them back at any given time to share with us.
We might actually make that invitation now.
Right.
To come back in February and tell us how they're doing.
It's scheduled, so.
Yep.
The December ends, it takes a month or so, maybe 6 weeks. We have the meeting, and then to your point, February is a normal timeframe
Okay.
for the year-end review.
Okay, so let's ask them to be at that board meeting. Can you
Yeah.
issue that invitation before you leave?
Sure.
So question, we still do sign or commit to the contract
Yeah.
now,
Yes.
without knowing like the exit strategy if needed, the 60.
Well, I've asked it. I think
We're approving with with the understanding that it's in that time frame.
So are we able to approve based on our understanding that there is an exit in 30, 60, 90 days? And if for some reason that is not true, then that would come back to us?
I'll get you the information.
Okay. Is that feasible?
is that something we can
She's
do?
nodding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
is there,
I'll move the question.
Want to follow, are you,
Sorry.
is
I'll
yours,
withdraw.
I guess maybe it's not even.
I think we have to do an amendment of your,
I guess I was
motion.
wondering whether or not we're doing the full contract as seen here, or are we doing the 1 year?
it would be the full contract.
Okay, full
If
contract.
we
Stay
can
in the
actually
consortium.
exit in
Right,
30,
yeah.
60, 90
But we're
days,
approving it as
Correct.
seen, yes, right here. Okay.
making
3
the
years.
assumption that we can exit with notice at any point, then yes, that would be what we would propose to vote on.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
Right, so we need to
Did I say
amend
that
the
right?
motion to reflect that it is conditional on that.
Yep.
Someone like to make an amendment?
I move that we approve the renewal contingent on our exit being 30, 60, 90 as stated.
Okay, is there,
As the maker of the motion, I accept that as a friendly amendment.
okay. Do we need?
I would keep it up to 60, not 90. 90 is maybe too much, too long.
They said 30 or 60.
They
Yeah,
30 or
we can
60.
do
Okay, take out my 90.
Just-
Amend my motion to remove the 90. 30 or 60.
Friendly amendment to the amendment.
No more than 60.
No more than 60. Thank you.
All right, I'm not sure if we need that to be another second, but if it's a friendly amendment, probably not. So,
We can have a second just for the heck
But
of
the
it.
the last motion on the table was made by, before this one, was made by Director Case, seconded by Mark Foley to approve the contract as stated.
okay,
But Director Baker made the motion to remove this piece from.
Right.
well, but
and I-
then you made the motion to approve and I seconded it. So,
Correct. And
so it's
you made
you,
the,
it's you who has to make the friendly
You're amending your own.
amendment.
okay.
You can-
What words do I have to say?
I would like to propose a friendly amendment to Director Case's motion that we approve the contract contingent on our discovery that the 30 to 60 day window does exist for us to cancel our engagement with the contract, with the firm.
That works, Sherry?
I like it.
Okay, you have to accept it.
I accept that
There you go.
friendly motion.
All right, did you want to move to call the question?
I don't have to.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yes.
President G.
I would like to also add at any time, not just after 1 year. I'm afraid that they're gonna not accept 30 or 60 days until after the first year.
No, they said anytime.
They said
anytime.
And that's,
Anytime.
that's part of what we're going to confirm.
Yeah,
Yes.
we hammered.
Good,
it.
good question.
If I need to clarify my,
No, we're good.
okay.
I just have like a point of just wisdom needed here for me. When you guys switched firms before, was it in the middle of or at the end of the contract?
I don't remember. Mr. Hollow, do you remember?
Yep.
When we switched investment firms last time, was it
It was. we did our
mid-contract or
own-
at the end of a renewal period?
It was actually Baird. and
Yeah.
They were not performing well, so we went out for RFP. And we chose PFM.
Right, but the question is, did we do that at the end of the contract's term, or did we just,
It was, I
Give
don't
them
believe it was
notice.
at the end of the contract term, it was, we just made a decision
In
that,
the middle,
yeah, we made a decision.
middle of the
to-
and then because you did that, you had to do RFP separate from the consortium.
Absolutely, yeah, it was, we were on our own.
Go ahead.
okay, I think we're ready to take a vote. I want to be clear that what we are voting on is to approve the PFM contract. Subject to the condition that our general counsel confirmed that under this contract, we do indeed have the ability to terminate on no more than 60 days notice at any time. Motion by Director Case, second by myself. All those in favor, let's see, we don't need a roll call vote for this. All those in favor, please indicate that by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, board action items.
We're not done.
And that's it.
And now,
Right.
is there a motion to approve resolution F 0297-12-23 to approve the auditor's communication to those charged with governance and management policy? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion by Director Case, second by Director Baker. Mr. Hollow, would you like to have a chance to speak with us tonight?
We have the partner of our
Baker
audit
till
firm,
it's there.
Paul France is on, and
Okay,
we can invite him to explain this.
sure, Mr. France. Where are you here? France?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Barely.
Yeah, it's a little,
Yeah.
little muffled and weak.
Yeah, I do apologize for that. I did have to switch locations. But you should have received my presentation recorded. And this is our required communication to you as a governing body related to the audit.
Okay, so let's be clear about which document we are approving here. If we don't have any questions.
This is the audit.
The auditors
The auditor's report.
Yep.
So this is item 5A.
Yep.
It's not coming up here. There we go.
Do you need a motion?
I think we have a motion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes,
there's a motion.
you were the
Right,
second.
sorry.
Are there any questions on the board about this?
I just had one, I just have one comment. I was delighted to see that they did not find any irregularities. And the items from last year that they did find, we have corrected, including some errors that were in student financial aid, some things like that, that we have corrected our processes. And Baker Tilly is a very well-respected firm. And so seeing that, I really, good work, guys. I really think that it really speaks well of financial management.
Anything else? There being no other questions or comments, we have a motion by Director Case to approve the resolution, a second by Director Baker. This requires a roll call vote.
Director Burris.
Aye.
Director Case.
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Aye.
Director Martin Okunde.
Aye.
Director Najib.
Aye.
Director Owen Moore.
Excused.
Director Pence.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Foley.
Aye, resolution passes. Thank you. Next is resolution F0298 12 23 to approve the fiscal year 2022 23 annual comprehensive financial statement. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Burris, a second by Director Case. Mr. Hollow, would you tell us about this, please?
This is the annual comprehensive financial report. It's the financial statements, and it shows all of the footnotes and all the details, all the information related to the audit. And it had a clean, as mentioned earlier, it had a clean report. A clean report means there were no findings nor irregularities. And so that's what we're looking for. So
Any questions on the financial report or the motion? Seeing none, we have a motion by Director Burris and a second by Director Case to approve the resolution. This requires a roll call vote, please.
Director Case.
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Aye.
Director Martin Okunde.
Aye.
Director Najib.
Aye.
Director Owen Moore.
Excused.
Director Pence.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Burris.
Aye.
Director Foley.
Aye, resolution passes. Next is resolution F0299 12 23 to approve the single audit report policy V0103. Again, Mr. Hollow, would you please introduce this for
the
us?
single audit is basically it has to do with our grants area. And it also has to do with financial aid, and this is the area where we had findings last year. And this is where, as the Director Baker mentioned, that those have all been communicated by the partner at Baker Tilly. Paul France has actions were corrected.
Any questions about this resolution or the single audit report? There being none, we have a motion by Director Burris, a second by Director Baker. Is that right? No.
No, we didn't have a mission.
Second by Director Case. And we need a roll call vote.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Aye.
Director Martin Okunde.
Aye.
Director Najib.
Aye.
Director Owen Moore.
Excused.
Director Pence.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Burris.
Aye.
Director Case.
Aye.
Director Foley.
Aye, resolution passes. Next agenda item is our monthly reports, and specifically starting with the chair's report. First, as most of you were at commencement, this will come as no surprise to you. We give our congratulations to the over 700 winter commencement students who graduated on December 10th, 2023. The ceremony was held at Fiserv Forum and will be broadcast Saturday, January 6th at 10 a.m. on Milwaukee PBS Channel 36. Since this was the first commencement ceremony for board members Najib and Pence, we're going to put you on the spot and ask you if you'd like to share your thoughts on the ceremony.
It was an honor for me to be there. It was really rewarding experience. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
Dr. Najib?
I thought it was very organized. Everything went very well on time. And it was a strange feeling for me to be on the other side too. That's great. And last weekend, I was sitting in the audience with my nephew graduating from dental school in the same place, but I can see where I was the week before. But thank you for allowing us to participate. It was a really good experience.
And thank you for all of you on board who were there. Appreciate your attending. Next is the Foundation Liaison Report, Director Case.
Yes, so the MATC Foundation Board met on Thursday, December 7th for its quarterly meeting. The board was presented with and/or discussed the following. The board received notification of a clean audit. So yay. The board received a fundraising activity update. Donors have collectively contributed $2,796,213 towards the MATC Foundation's $5 million full year 23-24 goal as of Friday, December 15th. Two recent major gifts include $100,000 Molson Coors pledge toward the Chakota Scholarship and $180,000 state gift from a retired employee who split a gift to scholarships and the MATC Foundation's Student Emergency Assistance Program. The MATC Foundation is now only $89,000 away from completing the $2.5 million fundraising campaign for the MATC Chakota Scholarship, where Ellen and Joe Chakota match each gift $2 to $1 match to create a $7.5 million scholarship fund. As part of the campaign, the Chakotas have given $1 million cash every time donors collectively give or pledge $500,000. So far, MATC has served more than 720 students through the scholarship. The board met on preliminary discussions for strategic planning for the MATC Foundation, which will continue into 2024. Lastly, the Foundation board participated in an input session for the presidential search, led by Jim Johnson of Greenwood, Asher and Associates, and myself, who serves as the MATC board, district board liaison to the MATC Foundation board, which went very well, by the way.
Thank you.
That's all.
Great, thank you.
Questions about the foundation report? All right, next is my update on the presidential search. We scheduled more than 36 listening sessions of various kinds. I believe there are a couple with individuals that are yet to be completed, but this process was completed in about 10 days. It was a lot of activity. Director Baker attended, I think, all but one session. I came in a distant second, but we had board members. Director Burris attended one at our request as well. We had board members at every listening session except ones that we intentionally stayed out of in order to make sure we were not having an adverse impact on candid communications. So the next step is that Greenwood Asher is working on the position profile. They are expecting to get it to us this week. We need to review that and get it completed as soon as possible so that they can be out in the marketplace as planned the second week of January. I think, we are going to have, well, let me say that, my suggestion is that you will all see the draft of the profile. I think it would be most expedient if you would send your comments and questions to me. And then we can work in the executive committee to get it refined. Otherwise, we're going to have a special meeting or two between now and the middle of January. And I think that's probably not realistic. Anybody have any comments about that as a procedure?
No.
Okay, good. That's it for the presidential update. I'm sorry, the chairman's report. Now the president's report.
Okay. Well, good evening. Let's say good afternoon, but good evening, Chair Foley, board members, faculty, staff, students, and our community. On December 4th, it is the season. We are celebrating quite a bit this month, but on December 4th, we did have the governor's AI task force here on campus. We do have one of our own, Don Kasperzak, our MATC Information Security Director and Enterprise Analyst, was part of that task force, and he gave a report to our cabinet on what they are working on. There certainly is a key component of that task force, and that has to do with education's role in making sure that everyone understands AI and what the future of AI is, and the ethics around that, and as well as what the skill sets are that are needed. We have an internal AI committee that we have formed for this very purpose, composed of faculty, staff, and Don is part of that as well. So he will bring all of that information back as well. On December 12th, 12 students were recognized at Walker Square for the Integrated Education and Training IET program. And this program allows students to earn 6 college credits that they can use to start an associate degree or technical diploma here. And at the same time, they're also completing their high school credential, which is GED, HSED. So it's a great program. Those same students then came last night as part of our community education program, where we had over 300 students receive their GED, HSED graduation at our Cooley Auditorium. So we had a lot of our community partners who also graduate these students. They all come together, and we've done that for quite a few years. And it is it's not a subdued crowd. It is a very active crowd with very passionate members of families and friends there as well. And then today, I really had the pleasure this morning of welcoming and delivering remarks to 10 graduates of our Second Chance Pell program, Welding Fundamental Certificate program. Thanks to Dr. Sadiq Isahaku for his efforts to bring Second Chance Pell here to our campus, and all the great work that he has done over the years. Really appreciate it. Again, family and friends were there. It was a very moving ceremony as well. I just also like to thank Jeff Hollow and recognize him. This is his last board meeting. He will be leaving us for retirement. And so thank you for all your years of service here, Jeff, and really appreciate everything you've done for the college and for our students.
Thank you.
Best wishes to everyone. Happy holidays. That ends my report.
Any questions for Dr. Martin? Great. Next is I'm sorry, Dr. Najib.
I just want to say that Dr. Martin speech was really excellent, especially in UWM graduation. Also, she gave a speech just excellent with her personal story and struggle. It was very effective. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that.
Next is the enrollment report. Mr. King and Ms. Pablos Martinez, please.
Good evening, everybody. Dr. Pablos Martinez is out this evening, so you got me. Good evening, board chair, board members, and members of the faculty and staff. Appreciate being in front of you today. Beth, is this report on the screen? I don't remember. Oh, okay. So before we begin, I will always say to Dr. Pence, thank you for the questions. We have not necessarily gotten a chance to respond to them yet. You will get responses to those early January, and then we'll reflect on how we can make changes to the report for the following month. But we did receive them, and we will respond to them. Thank you. Okay. And I do have, I know Tony is back there in case you have questions and he said he was available. So after I'm done, and then you can come forward if you have questions. Okay. I'll begin. We've got it up on the screen. Sure, if you all have it in front of you, or are we waiting for it to be projected? I'm sorry.
Would you have it?
Okay, do you want to just begin with it in front of all of you?
Yes.
Okay. So as of December 11th, so about 1 week ago, here's what's in front of you. December numbers, I think you've seen before, falls where we're finishing. So you see budgeted 3950, you're finishing approximately at 3942, 99.79% attained. And so below the chart, you see FTEs needed to meet goal for fall. We were 8 shy FTE of our goal, 0.21, but as a goal, so we were setting a marker to achieve FTE. We did get close, very close to meeting that goal. And then secondarily, on the row below, you're now starting to see a greater sense of spring. So you see spring numbers budgeted 3784, currently at 2285. Reminder, our registration period does begin quite some time ago, early November. We have a long cycle. That registration goes all the way through the 3rd week-ish of January, so into the 1st week of the semester for the students. So you should continue to see those numbers rise. By the time we get to the next meeting, you should see that kind of number get closer to the 3784. But if you remember our pattern, during the course of the year, we climb during the course of the semester. At some point, we might dip, come back up again. I'll show you that in a follow-up report. Into the next page, you see enrollment fall of 2024. And again, reminder, this data sheet is to express how we met our FTE target compared to previous years. So in the final column, you see 1211. And then the 3rd row down, our fall 2024 data for 3942 matching from the prior sheet. That's our FTE for the finish. We do a comparison to the prior year, and we also like to do a comparison to 2020 as a marker of kind of perhaps where we were as a high. You see the percentage or difference in the row 4 as minus 19 or 914, and the percentage change of 18% or 19 approximately percent from the year 2020. However, for a difference from year prior, so this year compared to last, 147 FTE ahead and at 3.87% higher in FTE overall. One of the nice things, and there's fluctuations in semesters as they may occur. Sometimes you do see somewhat a precipitous drop, depends on the college. Haven't been here long enough. As you finish the term where students make choices to drop out, you're seeing a maintenance of our FTE over time. We would have to give you more feedback in the future about our retention efforts to hold on to those students. I'll move on to the next page on headcount. And thank you for putting that. I think it is up on the screen behind or in front of all of you as well now. And again, 3rd row down, fall 24, you see 18,591 as a headcount measure. Below, again, you're seeing changes 4th line from 1805, negative 1805 from 2025, percent change of 8.84% down again 2020. So that 4-year difference. However, you are seeing from last year, in the second to the bottom row, an 801 increase in total headcount from the year prior, a 4.5% increase in headcount. Again, reminder, we are 90-ish% part-time students at our institution. So those comes in onesies and twosies sometimes. But as we finish the semester, what you often see is a rise at the end because we still do in some cases paper registrations. And those do come in from our satellite sites, and sometimes they don't hit our system until we're finishing processing at the end. Unfortunately, I think we've improved there, but I'd have to do more discovery. I'm not unused to that when I make that statement from other colleges. And then on our final or the next slide, you're looking at your demographics, fall 2024. Again, you've seen this data fairly consistently, and it really does not change throughout the course of the semester. We could look at that at some point. And the marker note below, again, when you've heard us talk about our HSI designation, when we do that, there are different ways we do measure that as compared to what you see here. So this number does reflect 24.88%, close to what we want to be at 25%, but that's not the official number we use, which is slightly lower. This one, and remember, does take in all students. For HSI designation, we look at credit bearing. So as a marker, just a reminder. And that is the end of our quick enrollment report that I have for you. You take questions, bring others more.
Director Case.
So just as a point of clarification, when you have listed on the final slide
Fine, yeah.
in gender as well as ethnicity as unknown, is that unknown because that the student has chosen not to disclose,
Typically.
or is it unknown because they select unknown?
No, typically it's because they choose not to select. I think that's how our options are set up. They choose not to declare.
And we've not updated our gender selections?
I don't believe so. I'm actually going to refer Tony on this. I'm not sure as a relationship to how we set up the application. Sometimes that comes in with all kinds of gender options, and I don't believe we've done that.
Correct, and there are others who probably have more detailed knowledge of this than me, but I also know that the application starts with something standard from the system, from the state system, which we can then adjust. But I know in prior conversations, when we've talked about issues surrounding this, state and federal reporting has been one of the issues that needs to be addressed in order to make changes.
So from a corporate standpoint, we tend to say undisclosed versus unknown. It feels a little
Friendlier.
more clarifying as far as whether we're saying that the person chose not to answer it and we don't know what their preference is versus they're saying unknown. So I fully acknowledge that sometimes it's a government form given to us, but if it's possible to change that verbiage, it feels a little outdated and limiting to me, both on the gender as well as the ethnicity.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. What? Go ahead.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Thank you. I know I joked about this before, but knowing that the percentage of the unknown is so big.
Same page.
Yeah, I would love to see if there's a way for us to resurvey those students because we might actually be at the HSI levels for us to
Could be.
get that designation. So, but I mean, I know I said it jokingly before, but is this something that we could do, like reach out to those students? Is there a way for us to do a quick search to figure out who they are and try to survey them?
And I think understanding whether it's I chose not to disclose
Correct.
versus we just don't know would help us understand what that group of students.
I mean, it's a big number.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also back on gender, I mean, if we're not giving non-binary students an option.
Yeah.
It's not unknown, it's just that we are not giving them an option of what to check.
Right. If we're gonna do a survey, we don't have to comport with the other government levels requirements.
So oftentimes we are dictated a survey from the government. That is our first step. And so that's where I want to understand, is this I chose not to answer my official government survey, or we just don't know what the answer is, in which case I would suggest we follow up and say, hey, are you interested in sharing?
I think is that something we can do?
We can explore. I'll say first thing, probably to Tony's comment, often the state request for us as a relationship to the data make a statement here, in a special way, directly reflects the language that's used in our student information system. So the convention sometimes is a mismatch, so we're trying to match what the state's asking us to do and how it then sits in our SIS, perhaps. But why don't we do this? Why don't I explore your questions and have a response back related to both the sense of how unknown is categorized, why, whether or not we can make the change, one for both categories, and to the extent that we can be responsive related to additional follow-up about how to get more information. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Director Baker, did you have?
No, that was it.
Director Mendieta Ramos, anything else?
Thank you.
Director Najib.
Yes, I have a question. The student of the refugees family from Rohingya, Afghani, and the Middle East, which category they're supposed to be in? We have many of those.
As we're representing ethnicity, I don't know if it might have come up I'd have to look at the fields. I don't know if it's coming up in that particular field or if it's coming up in a field that has a relationship to residency status. You do see non-resident alien here, but there are other statuses related to resident status or international status. I would have to look into that.
So I recognize that we have government forms, but I feel like residency is separate from ethnicity. And so if we separate those two categories, if we are allowed under what is provided to us under government regulations, if we are allowed to separate that, that feels a little bit more inclusive to me.
So perhaps again, we've run into this numerous times when we're looking at data. So I think there is a piece where we have data that we have to turn to the state, or if we're dealing with certain federal grants or whatever, that we have to, abide by federal standards. But in terms of, as a college, understanding who our students are, for this board, understanding what our metrics are, in that case, I think then we're asking, can we please have information that's requested of our students that reflects the ethnicity of the students that we have, that gives gender options for our students so that we have a better understanding.
And I would be respectful of, I choose not to answer it versus just unknown. So I think that's also part of, I want to understand the difference in that group.
I think many will say unknown.
Let's one at a time, please. Director Case.
No, Director Burris had a question before.
Okay,
I
Director.
just want to know if we could add, since you guys have the note on the bottom, can we just actually add where we are with the HSI?
As a part of this report?
Yeah, just put it on the bottom, so I know that you guys are writing a note trying to distinguish that, hey, this number is not that number. Can you just tell us where we are right there?
Oh, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Director Najib.
I want to continue my comment. I know many students that choose to leave it empty, to keep it unknown, because they don't see their category there, their ethnicity there. Just leave it empty.
No. Director Moore.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that Alien has a government designation. However, I'm wondering if we are allowed to use softer language in our approach. When I think of Alien, I think of like the Predator or ET or something like that. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity that we be allowed to use softer, more humanizing language to discuss our students.
Okay, I think this is already being put on the list of changes to the report, see what we can do.
Sure.
There's one more in that category, and that is when somebody tells us it's 2 or more races, do we ask them to tell us what the 2 or more are?
Not on government forms.
Not on government
experience,
forms,
but we potentially could ask.
yeah.
Sorry.
And I'm not going to tell you how to do this, but a suggestion to consider is if we're going to survey students who gave us answers that don't allow us to categorize them as we need to categorize them, we should tell them why it's important to us to know, right? And I don't know if that's in the current survey mechanism or not, but it's important to us for a variety of reasons, and I'm sure you can figure out what those are. But I think we might get a better response if we say this is important to the college so that we can do X. Anything else about the enrollment report from anybody else?
I have questions.
Director Pence.
I sent out I sent out an email. I was just kind of questioning how, should we be tracking things by pathway or and not just manufacturing pathway, but many of the pathways to see if we need to pivot our marketing towards a different pathway. And then my other question is, as you're seeing the ups and downs of the enrollment part of that. Is there any, do you do any strategic planning to see if about the specifically about the enrollment process? Are we doing our best job at getting kids in the door? People in the door, I'm sorry.
It's, you asked me two different questions. Do you want me
Please.
to make note, respond?
Sure.
Respond?
Respond.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Tony, for joining me.
You're marketing that right up.
So, two things. One, I'll respond to the second part first, which is, and I'll leave this to your discretion, Mark. I think it's a fantastic question. I think we have a lot of efforts that we need to undertake to look at our entire enrollment process, especially on the front end, and we have some work to do. That may or may not reflect necessarily within the context of the pathway, so separate questions, right? But we have some work to do. I will tell you that. Just what is the process? What is our intake? How do we bring them through relationships of our teams? The movements between members of a team, how many times someone gets contacted. There's some work to be done. So is there an analysis then at the level as a relationship with the overall report? A little bit, like we've done that work and we do it within SEM, our SEM committee. Tony's actually one of the co-facilitators. To the extent it's deeper along the pathway level. Also, I would say a little bit, and that's where one of the deans may come in. Dr. Dackworth probably can speak to that. I think on a semester basis, they do look at their pathway data, the numbers of students, both from an application perspective, who's applied, who's basically on a contact end, but more importantly, who then transitioned into the pathway, like the numbers of students declaring interest, the contact points, the number of contacts, and the relationship of enrollment. What was our enrollment? Did it go up? Did it go down? Adjustments to the schedule. There's a lot of finesse and nuance to that. I do say I know I'm more, well, I'm involved on both sides, but I think I've heard this more from Dr. Dackworth, so that last process is in my head much more robustly, if that's fair. And so to your second or to your first question, can we do it by pathway? I think that's a good analysis level. I think you might then see a secondary sheet. We'd want to think about how big the report is, but you could see both perhaps as the FTE or even the head count and expression by pathway. And I think that the deans regularly do look at that. That's fair. Yeah. And so we can actually show that here as well. It'd be a new report. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can speak a little bit to the marketing piece, Director Pence, Chairperson Foley, and members of the board. So we do include pathway specific marketing in our campaign for each of the 7 pathways. There's also marketing for community education in there. And so we're looking at that from both a performance standpoint to see where we can lean in, which, you know, we were just talking today about that mix with our ad agency. And so we're looking at enrollment to help inform that, but we're also looking at the college's academic multi-year plan to inform it. And so when we add new programs, we look at additional support for them and things along that line. So there are active campaigns right now for all the pathways, in addition to campaigns promoting enrollment broadly for the whole institution. And we do look at, again, enrollment and academic multi-year plan information to help inform what that looks like.
Can I ask a couple more questions?
Let me let Director Case ask a follow-up question here first, and then we'll come back to you.
I've raised this question in the past when we've had deans present kind of a status on where they are, specifically the STEM pathway and specific to manufacturing. And I've asked the question around how are we bringing in non-white male students into those pathways and how are we supporting them through that? Because that is a challenge in manufacturing as well as other STEM careers. And I've not gotten a clear answer. The deans have defaulted to marketing and not, in my experience, taken ownership of it. So I would also just like to understand who exactly owns that and what is their path in that. We've also talked about having instructors that look like the students that are in the pathway, specific to Black male instructors in key areas. And we've not actually gotten data specific to pathways. So I feel like this is a bigger discussion than what's happening right now. And so I don't want to put this all on you right now to give us an answer, but I do think it's important for us to understand what the student base is in key pathways, because STEM pathways, manufacturing pathways are family sustaining wages. And so I really get frustrated when we have things like programs that push women into early childhood education or daycare providers. And not that I'm discrediting any of those, but that pay is not family sustaining. And so I've asked multiple times, how do we bring women and non-white males into some of those pathways and careers? And I've not necessarily gotten a clear ownership or answer, so I would like to understand what that looks like.
Sure. I got a three-part response.
Yes, go ahead.
2 and 3.
Also,
One goes-
if you need to like come
one
back,
goes
that's
back to
totally fine.
Tony, but 2 and 3, I think there's a component of this is about retention by pathway.
Mhm.
That is the deans. Like when you're thinking, it's broadly everybody,
Right.
but the deans own quite a bit of
Okay.
it, holding on to the student, the engagement and support around with the support structures, engagement of the faculty members in a faculty mentoring model, transition to internships and apprenticeships. Like that's the finish of the pathway. That's where I'd say the deans say they are connected to Tony and team here on a recruitment perspective. That's one. I'll come back to that to your number 3. And I think this would be to your comment about appropriate faculty representation, right? I think that would be a response that I would ask that we ask, let Elle Bonds respond to, because she does have some processes in place as a relationship to that. I have asked to partner with her on that. I have made some efforts elsewhere. However, she has done a lot of work, so I do not want to speak for her. I hit 2, I hit 3. Tony will talk about recruitment because that is it.
Sure. And we'd be happy to prepare some more detailed information on this. We're very intentional about ensuring that we're reaching out to the community we serve. Our paid marketing is focused on our geographic district. Our recruiters are assigned to the high schools. We have a good representative group of recruiters so that when our recruiters go out to our schools and go out to the community partners, they're seeing recruiters who look like themselves. And then broadly, so that reflects kind of the overall efforts. Then there are some specific grant funded efforts that are very focused on so for example, we have a grant related to information technology where we have an advisor at the college who serves students coming from a set of Milwaukee high schools. And so then on the marketing and recruitment end, we're looking to make sure, okay, are we geographically targeting these particular high schools where we have designated support for the students once they come here? So one example, and then I know, again, if there's interest in additional detail, that there is a non-traditional occupations grant managed at the college within our Career Hub group. And again, we could look to provide specific additional information there.
Director Pence.
Just a couple of last questions. I think I'd like to see a strategic plan for next year. I want enrollment numbers would be. And Tony, also, do we need to get out to industry more? Are we missing people that are in industry that want to do something different within industry and want to come back to school? So, that's, I've started to see a lot of good things on like LinkedIn and things, and that's probably an area that a lot of managers see and things, but I guess I'm just looking to pull straws here as to how do we market to the school better. Example, I've been at some of our customers, manufacturers, and they say, yeah, the other place is really cool. We don't know a lot about MATC. So I gotta say that, but I think the effort is there. So do you have a budget?
We do have a budget, and I would say our paid advertising budget has grown significantly in the last 5 or 6 years to be more commensurate with what we would anticipate for an institution of this size. And so specific to that, we're close partners with our workforce solutions team that goes out to businesses for contract training. And we have done some additional work on what sponsorship looks like so that if employers are sponsoring individual employees, to pursue a program individually, but we can always have more conversation and look at other strategies to continue to see the kind of growth we've seen in applications, both in past years, but then also looking towards the spring.
Any other questions tonight, Director Pence?
I
What's that?
second everything he said.
It's the only thing that I would add, and we've said this before, so I don't want to, reiterate, but also when I think about non-traditional careers and non-white students, I think middle school is key to bringing that awareness to students to be able to see that as a possibility, right? I think I think the data has shown that, you know, girls specifically choose what is possible to them early in middle school. And so if we're not getting in front of them, either through our own resources or through our K-8 or K-12 partners, we're missing a lot of potential in that. And so I know we've talked about it before. I know we've talked about funding and making sure that we've got resources to reach out, but I do think that that's really important as we build that knowledge of what a family sustaining career is and get their perspective around non-traditional careers that they may not see.
I have one further question, and I'm looking at the enrollment as of December 11th, 2023. This is the second page, kind of cover sheet there. And I'm looking at the 60.38% number for spring. I know it's early, but are we on track? Where were we, say, last year at this point in time, vis-a-vis the spring enrollment?
What was your referencing to?
The one with the funnel.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it, thank you.
So row 3, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's up on the screen. Tony and I were just discussing this earlier today, pacing. So how are we meeting pace? I think it's one of those things we were discussing whether or not we wanted to actually bring to this report for you to see. So not just the number, but now a pacing number. I think what we've got right now is we're 111% ahead of where we had been previously and what we expected to be. So we feel like we're on target, to answer your question.
Okay, good.
Fair?
Yes.
That is something that I'd like to see as part of
Part of the report?
Okay. Yeah, the raw number is hard to comprehend.
Okay.
Director Baker.
Yeah, and just, you know, I think we had sort of a free ranging conversation here. I don't think all of what was discussed is an enrollment report. I mean, just so.
Maybe, yeah.
I
maybe
don't
not.
think this is necessarily in the next enrollment report. We need a report on our initiatives on non-traditional students as well. But I think it does speak to the fact that the board wants to be well informed on the progress of our educational programs and the fit in particular targeted audiences, as well as what do our pathways look like in, you know what I mean? So I don't want to put all the pressure here on an enrollment report, but clearly there's more information.
Okay. May I respond quickly?
Sure.
What I heard was that we will be responding to some of the clear questions that we had for the board to you early in January-ish. Give us the break there. And but related to both the questions that were received tonight, applications, how we do some of the ethnicity comments, gender, race, what's neutral, what's not, what's possible, some of the questions you previously asked as responses to the board. And then also have a report prepared, an enrollment report that has some of the nuance. Two different things. All right.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next is the Milwaukee PBS General Manager's Report. Debbie Campbell here. There we go.
Good evening. Switching channels a little bit.
Oh, that was bad.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I had to wake you up for a minute. Come on now, give me a little credit. Okay, so
It's a public television show.
first, our revenue update, our goal is for the year is for the fiscal year 6.7 million. Roughly, we're at about 47% of that goal, which is pretty good. I was hoping for 50%, but we're close. December pledge drive just wrapped up and included tickets for Andrea Bocelli and Celtic Woman. John McGivern was in the studio, and we saw a noticeable increase in new members that night with John McGivern, which was nice to see. And although we didn't make our overall goal of 225,000, we raised almost 90% of it. So with one weekend less. So I feel like that's a win. So we'll take that. Year-end giving spots are in rotation from all of our local hosts. And we actually went out into the community and got holiday spots for families and individuals around the Milwaukee area. And you'll start to see them if they haven't already started running. I know they were working on that last week. And there's some really, really fun ones in there, like big families, 2 people, just a big variety. We went to all kinds of places to collect that. So we were really pleased with being able to do that. We were notified recently of an estate gift from a beloved MATC faculty member, Geraldine Geisner, to support Milwaukee PBS. And so we were really happy to be able to share that.
Letters to Santa is currently airing and celebrating its 50th year. I asked someone earlier today, is that our longest running local production? And we think it is. The only other one is Black Nouveau, which is 52 years, we think, but it had lots of different iterations of what that show was. So right there with it, 50 and 52 years. Produced and directed by MATC television production students, completely. We participated in the media walkthrough for the RNC on November 30th. The PBS NewsHour election production team was also there and requested 2 places to report from in the building. One of them is a higher up suite that looks down on the entire arena. And then another stand-up spot, which is close to the floor. And we were offered use of that when it's not in use by them at no fee. So that was a very nice offer for them. It's unlikely that they will need our studio or office areas to house staff, mainly because they want to be inside the perimeter, the security perimeter. And so they've asked to have their production truck close there too. So we'll see if their request is granted. If it's not, then they may come back and want to do something different, may need our studios, but it's a long shot, I think. So we're also talking with WUWM and PBS Wisconsin on what we would do on the first night of the convention and the last night of the convention, which is what we did the last round. So we're doing that. And then 3 of our local programs, Black Nouveau, Adelante, and 1036, will have a dedicated story in every program leading up to the election, starting in March. So we'll have a segment dedicated to either an issue that's important to the communities, or how to vote, or something that's related to the elections. Recently met with PBS Wisconsin, Wisconsin Public Radio, WUWM, and Radio Milwaukee. And we discussed the idea of putting together a voter guide in several languages available online through each of our websites. And although we only had one conversation and it's a big project, I'm optimistic that it could be done. And I think it's a good group. We had a great conversation. It has been done at other stations. So there are guidelines and format things that we wouldn't have to recreate. So I'm really excited about the possibility of doing that. And aside from some other fluff, I will conclude my report right there to get back on time. And I'd be happy to answer any question that you may have, but otherwise I'm done.
Any questions?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is our district student senate report. Kimberly Haynes, please.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, speak up so we can get you on the feed.
Thank you, Director Foley. And Dr. Ricky Martin, who's not here right now, but members of the MATC District Board and Administration. I'm excited to share that the Student Government Association and the District Student Government Association have held another meeting. In the District Student Government, we began a discussion regarding a name change to help increase student participation. We also approved funding to assist with travel costs for a mothership to go to San Diego, and also attending Midwest Game Classic to give students more opportunities. We also began discussing spring events, including having a family day at the Milwaukee County Zoo in the spring. Other ideas included a carnival when the weather is nice, Brewers, Bucks, Admirals games, the group leadership conference for organizations. In the West Allis Student Government, we met on 12/13/2023 and discussed setting up times for recruiting new members, having a welcoming into 2024 and the spring semester on February 14th, 2024, where we discussed the possibility of offering pizza, burgers, or subs, setting up a spring cleanup, having a poorly drawn pets to raise money for the West Allis Student Government, and a winding down semester with having rock painting. In Wisconsin, student government, we didn't have a December meeting. However, we will have our third meeting on January 12th at North Central Technical College. WSG is continuing planning for the legislative summit in Madison, Wisconsin for February, where we will advocate for technical education to legislatures and representatives. Lastly, as a student, I enjoyed getting involved in attending events at the West Allis campus through student life. Specifically, I enjoyed the end of the semester holiday party with Santa, whom I had a picture taken with, along with some cookies, hot chocolate, and received a hat, scarf, and glove bag. There were approximately 60 people there. I also continue to enjoy puzzles for de-stressing, which I have done on several occasions. These events have helped me build new connections to other students and staff while positively engaging in new experience. Finally, I thank you all for your time and the opportunity to share this information with you today and keep you updated. We hope that you have a safe and beautiful holiday season and Happy New Year's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Haynes? Thank you very much. Oh, Director Moore.
How are you enjoying your time here with us?
I really do enjoy it. I'm taking the notes and then asking, working with, Eric to figure out who can I talk to get things, because since I don't get to ask questions, who can I talk to ask my questions?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did someone give you an answer to that?
Eric does.
If the West Allis Student Council needs help with fundraising, have them reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is the OPEB and FCC trust report. I think we've covered that as much as we need to.
No, really?
No,
You
no,
think?
I have
Okay.
questions.
Let's call him back.
I'm not clear. Sustainability report is Laura Tenpenny here. There she is. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me today. Nice to see some familiar faces, see some new faces. I'm Laura Tenpenny, I'm the energy manager here at MATC. I had a little recording for you. I hope you had a chance to take a look at it, and I just wanted to put it up and ask if you have any questions for us.
Director Baker.
I just have, I love the report. I love the progress we're making. I think it's very exciting. It's very timely. There's a lot of federal funding that is coming into the state around different greening technologies and sustainable technologies. Now, I know some of them are tax credits, which that's not so meaningful to a public institution, but are there funds that we're going to be able to access?
Yes, so I don't want to speak in depth too much because I'm not as familiar, but a lot of our partners that we work with for like our engineering and our architects and our consultants do know a lot about like the IRA funds that are
Yes.
coming. So there are things that even though we're, you know, a tax-free entity, we still are able to take advantage of some of them.
Okay.
So they are going to help partner with us and let us know when we're doing these projects, which ones are going to be able to benefit from some of those so that we can use those. We still partner with Focus on Energy whenever we can for getting incentives from that. And then, yeah, any other federal grants and things we can receive.
And I do know that Dr. Martin's office has had some conversations with Forward Together Wisconsin, who's sort of positioned themselves, and Dr. King, I think maybe you were there, right? Who have positioned themselves as being one of the conduits to help people locate those funds. So we should make sure that you're connected to that.
Absolutely. And a good example is I can't remember the name, but there's a group that is helping with Department of Energy, has some different funds available to, for instance, electric vehicle charging, and they have free services to help us with what are we able to use and take advantage of there. So we have a meeting coming up. Our sustainability specialist is going to be meeting with them to help us understand what we can use and where we can get help.
Exciting times.
Any other questions? Director Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering, in your conversations with Focus on Energy, have they talked about a timeline with you in reference to IRA dollars and their disbursement?
So Focus on Energy, from my understanding, wouldn't necessarily be taking those directly. So Focus on Energy works by all of us here. If you pay into your utility for any of your rates, if they're participating in Focus on Energy, you can benefit from the program. They strictly give you dollar incentives for doing energy efficient projects. So I don't think for sure that they're tapping into that specifically. They're gonna be working with the funds they receive through Act 1, I think it's 151, that they get those funds for, and then they distribute out in that regard. So I think they're separate, but if there is any crossover, we have a Focus on Energy representative that we meet with monthly, and he works with us through our different projects to help us identify where we're able to get incentives from them. And if they are knowledgeable about anything else we can receive, they're always willing to share.
What updates, if I may, Mr. Chairman, what updates are you receiving on IRA programming for larger institutions, if any?
So I hope I answer this correctly. We're working with, one of our groups is updating our integrated energy master plan, and they are very familiar with some of the IRA funding. So they've come to us and said, hey, we're knowledgeable about this. We can help you as you're looking at this plan going forward. Like I said, which projects are going to be able to use that funding. So partners like that who are going to help us identify which projects will be in line with that. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
I also just wanted to mention, if it's all right, we did receive an award from MMSD from the Green Luminaires Award, so I just wanted to bring it and present it to you all. We're very happy to have them. And in regards, this was to the water detention chamber that we have at the baseball field, the park and the green roof that we have here downtown.
Thank you. Is that the one over the library? Okay.
I'm sorry, over in the T building, there's that green roof, and then the pocket park is in the corner of 8th and Juno. There's a nice little area over there too.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I have one more question for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
We have these three goals for 2030. Are we on track?
We are a little bit behind. So if you looked at the graph of the energy, there was one line that was showing where we should be if you were to take our goal and divide it up year by year. But as you see, we have progress that is not exactly, perfectly linear.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're on track. We're a little bit behind. We do have some major projects going on that anytime we're doing HVAC projects, take a while to get implemented, but those have some of the biggest impacts for us. So we're doing a few studies on direction for instance, our 6th floor here in this building. We have a unit that serves maybe a third of that floor. We're doing a study to determine what is the best replacement option for us. When that does get done, that'll be a project we're going to pursue to replace our old equipment with something new, much more energy efficient. That's going to have a larger impact. So those years that those get put in, we see a bigger impact on that energy usage.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board monitoring, community education update, Sadiq Isahaku.
Oh, let's do it.
So good evening again, everybody. I'm up here with Dr. Isahaku as he's been leading the CEF, and I came alongside as it relates to even support at Walker Square directly or more broadly. And we had a set of questions. So although I think you did receive our community education report that we did put in, it was very brief as it has been about updates, enrollment, what we're doing. I think we did get, it was late last week and unfortunately we're not able to get it in your hands, but we have a set of responses to some prepared questions. And I had asked, and I think they're prepared then to kind of go back and forth, read the question and have a response back. And Chair Foley, is that still your preference? Okay,
Yes,
we
please.
will proceed. As I open, I'll at least just say, you haven't heard my voice here. It's been a lot of work, but it's actually been quite a pleasure to be working with Dr. Isahaku and the CE team at Walker Square. You may have not heard that way. There's a lot of really good work, a lot of really good questions people are asking. So I appreciate the opportunity for us to be here. More to come after this. And I'll turn it over to the next section for Sadiq, where he's just going to cover briefly our focus here, and it's a slight shift. So to you, sir.
Right, so this is our responses. Good afternoon or good evening. District board members, appreciate your questions. They are very pointed and they have actually made me to think a little deeper into what we do. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to just put a reminder that community education comprises a number of things. English language learners, which are called the ELL, ESL, adult high school, which includes contracts with MPS, emerging scholars, for instance, the general education diploma, GED, and then the high school equivalency diploma, the HSCD, and then a vocational courses and programs that are within this content. Academic programs are offered either in English only or bilingual, that's English and Spanish. And at our 4 campuses, including the Education Center at Walker Square and also at our various CDO locations. So that's the big picture.
So within that context, as we reflect on the first question that we've had tonight, as I think back to the questions you've had previously, right? Although there's this broadness to CE, a lot of the questions that you've been getting really have a relationship to that 1,000 headcount increase or approximately we've discussed before, right? Which is really in the ESL, ELL population. So that's where we're getting the predominant set of questions. That's where the growth has been. So that's the focus in our response, especially as it relates to faculty, okay? So our first question was, what measurable strides has the administration made to resolve the communities and board's concerns around surrounding community education? So a response to you, our discovery reports to the board, the 4 following critical areas have been our focus, right? Need for more faculty, both full and part-time. Need for more support staff related to peak hours of operation in the areas of admissions, testing, pre and post. Case management support through the funnel, like retaining and getting them through onto transitions or out. And then finally, just demand. So we have increased demand for ELL or ESL courses. Those are 4 key areas. In addition, through the CEAP action group, which you've heard a little bit about, it's a group that came around. Other work they've been doing, so I don't want to diminish it, also includes process improvements. So we're just looking at business process analysis. How well are we doing on intake, to your question earlier about enrollment? Same questions we're asking there, admissions, testing, enrollment in general. A consideration of a hub-based student support. More might come on that, but really it's the concept about an for want of a better way to put it, almost a resurrection of a one-stop shop. But really, when we think about early supports for persons who specifically don't speak English well and are highly challenged with technology, and this is reports from the faculty, it's got to look different than telling the student they might need to do it themselves. So we're looking at that. There's a team around marketing. Tony's been ahead of all of us in his reporting, as he usually is. I might let him comment on that later. And then the team is also focused on a strategic goal of the president's, which is that we're looking at transitions from students in these programs into pathways. You've heard some of those reports previously in the percentage. Finally, I'd say we've had a lot of questions about funding models. So we have been asking questions currently, what does it cost? But also, are there additional funding options? So you ask about strides. I'm trying to respond with some categories about emphasis areas, but the broadness of CEAP, okay? More specifically, comment on faculty hiring. Based on our approximately 1,000 headcount increase in ELL, ESL this past semester, you should approximate, I'll give you some numbers here. It looks at approximately about 50 total sections in order to accommodate that 1,000 students at 20 persons per section. So we're talking about 12.5 full-time faculty or 12.5 at equivalent full-time faculty teaching 4 courses per semester. So to get 1,000 ELL, ESL, we need about 12.5 in order to accomplish that, okay? Last year, we had 15 full-time faculty. Here, go ahead, question.
Full-time faculty, you say 12.5, right?
Yeah.
12.5 to equivalent. If you add all that up, it equates to about 12.5. Yeah.
Okay. We have 1,000 new students?
1,000 headcount. So it could be duplication.
New this semester.
Correct. This in
The fall.
In the fall.
Yeah.
Okay, but
That
let's,
has been reported previously. Go ahead.
all right, but let's be clear about, at least to me, about what that means.
Hmm.
What was the head count last year?
From the spring.
I don't, Oh,
I can provide the numbers because I collect these numbers on a weekly basis.
Okay, so here's what I'm getting. When you say we have 1,000 new students, that could mean we have 1,000 people who just enrolled, but it's not an increase in the total number of students.
Yeah.
No, it is.
So we
It's an
have a
increase.
base number and we're now exceeding that base number by 1,000.
Yes.
Approximately. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the
Which
12
is-
the 12 and a half faculty members you're talking about are what we need just to service that 1,000.
Potentially.
Okay.
Let me clarify.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, thank you.
right,
Thank you.
these numbers are this 4 that has just concluded on Friday, okay?
Okay.
So the 1,000 was in the 4. That's why there was a lot of, hustle to get classes assigned to faculty. So we are over that now. And so what the King is trying to explain now is that we needed 12.5 full-time faculty to be able to accomplish what we did this fall.
Okay.
Don't clarify
Director Burris.
one more thing.
Hmm.
So we're talking about 12 additional faculty members or
Potentially, yeah. But again, aggregate. I was gonna explain how we get there because it isn't always with full-time faculty. It could be different ways we get there.
Yeah, but this is still confusing.
Go
What
ahead.
was, so you have 1,000 new students.
Mhm.
How many old students were there?
I don't know what the baseline.
Or
number
what's
is.
the total number of students?
I have a graph if you want me to show it, and
Yeah.
I track this on a weekly basis. You want to see that?
Yes.
Sure.
But we met
Beth,
the
let me
needs of
send
those
this to you,
1,000
right?
students.
We managed to meet those needs.
Right, so the
Yes.
1,000 students have completed this semester.
Yes.
With
Additional.
Right,
So what was the
whatever
base?
the base plus 1,000,
Mhm.
we met that for fall semester.
Yes.
So when you say there's 12 headcount needed, is that to continue at that volume, or that's what we needed and we already secured?
The letter.
Okay, so we added equivalent of 12.
Got it.
Okay, perfect,
Yes.
thank you, sorry.
Okay, I think that's what we need.
Yes.
Okay. You need the base still?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Oh.
Already.
Do you have that number?
Yeah, I can provide that number. Right in a second.
Well, they don't have 12 faculty members. Is that what you're saying?
No, so that you added the coverage needed to get to the additional 1,000.
Mhm.
And will that continue to next semester?
It is-
Or
it
is that
is-
where you're going?
It is
Yeah.
expected to with,
Okay.
it may have not been some of your questions, but there are things that occur, which is, people may resign at the last minute, which someone
Right,
did last
right,
week. Yeah.
But we'll continue the faculty needed to meet the
Correct.
at least current state
Correct.
needs. Okay.
So did you move people from downtown?
There were a variety of things I believe Dr. Isahaku undertook to actually accomplish that goal. And that speaks to, at least as he's looking, I'll at least say, when we look at it, and I'm trying to give you this, and then Director Foley, to your questions, we can provide this as feedback to everybody after, if it's helpful, because they can look through it and give us additional questions. Okay. So we achieved that in 4 ways, technically, right? You look to hire new full-time faculty if that's possible. That's a category, right? Do I use the wrong category? I'm using my terms from a different college. Do we call them something else here?
No,
Forgive me.
you're right.
Okay. I'm still in Washington mode sometimes. So if that's not what we call it, forgive me. We also have a category called LTE, which is approximate full-time, but they're not permanent. So they teach and we hire them on a full-time basis, LTE, but not non-contracted, continuous year to year, right? So it's a different category. We also accomplish that by increasing potentially part-time, so part-time can do more. And you also accomplish that because you have full-time faculty or others LTE that can take more overload. So you accomplish it in multiple ways, and you did hear some full-time faculty saying, or LTEs, we are exceeding our normal overload in order to support the students. So multiple ways, and then multiple strategies that Sadiq used in order to encourage and support people to both come here as well as stay or as well as do more.
Right, so we moved from 7,000 to 8,000.
That is a lot of students. So I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry. So the plan that you use to get to meeting all the student needs for fall semester, is that sustainable going forward, or are you going to have to reconfigure that or re-strategize it every semester?
Absolutely sustainable.
Okay.
With some re-strategizing.
Right. Well, yeah, because I was just looking at the numbers in the last year. We've hired, and Philip was going to come to that. We've hired about 40 new people.
Yeah.
Right.
How many? Say that again.
40 overall.
Not related.
That's faculty and staff.
In the community education.
Right, from August. I got that report from HR this afternoon.
Okay.
And we can break it down for you.
So if we ask the faculty and staff if this is sustainable, will they give the same answer?
They may not say the same answer. They may not say, but we have other strategies. There are a lot of strategies in place, and if you give us a little time, we'll break it down for you.
And I would just comment
Continue now, please.
that Sadiq has used a variety of, perhaps he might say the same thing, with hushed breath and exasperation. He has worked to the ends of the earth to fill these. I mean, he really has. I'm working with him regularly. The amount of time it just takes a lot of time. It's not a bad thing, but I say re-strategize. I don't think that's a very good strategy you want to use every semester, right? I think we need to think both about the combination of additional full-time faculty supports as well as where part-time might fill in, knowing that, and part of this is a question about, is there continued demand that maintains? That's a question we have. We hear it, it's anecdotal. We need to do more research on that. And we want to make sure that, your commitment when you hire full-time faculty is they consider, old language, sorry, lifetime commitment, right? And when we think about it, and so we want to make sure we're appropriately thinking about the kinds of staff that we want to put in the classification, if that's fair, okay?
Yeah, I just want to throw something in there to make it a little more complicated because and more anxious for us coming in the spring. I've collected the spring numbers again this afternoon, and we are about 700 students ahead of where we were at the same time last spring. 700. So I just want to put that context out. And I'm very clear that the strategies we have in place, and we're going to have every classroom with an instructor in the spring.
I have a question.
Yes.
Dr. Najib?
Yeah, could you explain to me why, since you said the payment for LTE is similar to full-time teacher, why you don't convert them to full-time teachers?
I think I would give you feedback related to my work at other colleges. I don't know if that's appropriate here. I don't know if there's a response. Dr. Orland, better response?
Why are they?
Come on, hey,
sir.
One person at a time, please. Are we asking?
If that's appropriate?
I'm not sure what we're doing at this time. Are we asking Mr. Dakwar to provide you information? Is that where we're at here?
Well, as a response to the question that was.
Okay, so let's do that and let's please give them our full attention.
Sure.
I think Dr. Philip addressed it already, and our philosophy, Dr. Najib, is to hire full-time faculty. This way we secure permanent, fully committed faculty that would work for the college here. In some cases, we're not as confident about maintaining the enrollments, meaning say they fluctuate greatly. And the last thing that we want to see is for us to hire full-time faculty and then potentially not have enough classes for them. In this case, growth is phenomenal. I think we can feel very confident about hiring a big percentages of full-time faculty. Dr. Ishaq, who is going to be the first to tell you, it's been difficult to get some full-time faculty and part-time faculty. So we're working on that. We'll continue to look for those. And like I said, I mean, it is our interest to really kind of invest in full-time faculty when we feel confident about the enrollments and the growth, especially sustaining the growth.
So our goal is really to hire full-time faculty.
Always. Yep, because
Always.
we get that. Yep, of course. I mean, LTE, you're talking about limited term. Who's going to apply? Only people who are available. But if you go for full-time, permanent, long-term commitment to the college and the community, you get the best. So, yes.
We may also have full-time faculty who don't have full load in another area, and then we can shift them. And so if we have that kind of ability to be able to move faculty around, it really helps the whole college. And we do have to talk about budget at some point.
That's exactly right. And I think we look for cross certification, we call it, and Dr. Martin is exactly right. We try to build, sometimes it's an incentive for some people to pick up an overload, meaning say in addition to their full-time, they can teach an additional class. We look into that as well.
Okay, I'm gonna make a executive decision here. I'd like the presenters to finish presenting their report and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Okay, I'll finish this section. Okay. I had the long section. No, thanks. Okay, so the next section is really about staff hiring. You heard about faculty, so this is staff. You were hearing people say we need staff to support, right? So indirectly, you're going to hear a little bit more in the future. We don't have all of this answered, but right now we've hired an additional full-time student support specialist for indirect support from the education students with this at Walker's or Broadway. Broadly. We assigned, a little selfishly, Dr. Martin and I have been the interim directors at Walker Square, which was tough. And so we identified an interim person who could assist us as director of Walker Square, which would support the program there as well as CE. That person started on December 1st. We have an intention of filling that full-time position into the early spring semester. So this really direct supervision at that site. In addition, it's not here, but Dr. Isahako has been making an attempt to fill an associate dean position that's been quite complicated, again, to support continuing education. He's doing double duty there. And so we're hopeful that that would also get filled. We are adding testing. We've been adding testing staff. So you may have heard something different, but we are adding part-time testing staff, both here, but also at Walker's. It's nominal right now. It's addressing an immediate need. We need a comprehensive look. We're still working on that. Final thing I'd say would be more broadly, and it might fit a question you asked earlier, sir, about how are we looking broadly at the college and how we're assessing staff and ratios? And so I've asked for the deans to take a very broad look at all the ratios of support staff across all the pathways, reflect about the ratios as a relationship to what was originally assigned and then who we see to reflect better. This program then could end up with more support staff that are needed if we think about growth. So we're still in the middle of that assessment. Finally, I'd say we did comment, I commented here, but you already asked the question about the 1,000 headcount increase. So I will stop at that. The next question is to Sadiq and he can provide a response.
Well, the next question was, how does the college track students transitioning into post-secondary courses? For how long do they track these students? You know, so this was a very difficult question because the tracking is not what we want it to be. As soon as students declare an intention to transition to post-secondary education through actual registration for post-secondary courses, we track them, okay? As Dean of General Education, one of the issues we have is when students transition especially from community education to general education, their first gateway courses of mathematics and English are a struggle. We have found a way to resolve that, but I'm not doing general education today, it's community education. But we do track the transition because we know who is coming over and we know what their challenges is and we have resources to support them. For students in the IET, the Integrated Education and Training Program, this is a program where students who are in the GED, adult high school, and ELL programs are concurrently registered to take college level courses or programs. And right now we're introducing them to healthcare, business, and so on and so forth. We track them that way because they're already in post-secondary while they are concurrently. It's almost like dual enrollment, okay? They're getting ready to get their high school diploma and at the same time they're in a program. So that's how we track them. Does the college keep track of these students who stop and return? Not at this time. We intend to work with with IR to start tracking this category of students.
Next question. When will issues regarding onboarding, such as applications, testing, and student fees be resolved? So as you know, you've heard we've had a cross-functional committee in operation prior to my start, I think late spring, currently in action. That's the CEAP team. They've been working on this, have a set of recommendations. We've been trying to forward some of those recommendations, not necessarily waiting for everything, all reports to finish. So we're trying to implement things as we can. You've heard some of them earlier about adding staff. adding part-time staff, even thinking about faculty positions, right? We have more work to do, and it might be nested inside of some of the other comment I made about where we can get additional resources. I will say, and you've heard some of the comments, you do need more than me saying a support specialist, right? You might be multiple, including advising staff and a staff assisting with the transitions. We expect that we can get to those by looking at this review and doing some reallocation of resources. We're going to look significantly at that. You might get that in a follow-up report. I'm indicating we're going to bring that back to you again in early January, more as an outcome of what did the committee actually indicate and recommend. You might hear some duplication of what you're hearing tonight as well. Okay. And I think there was a question in here about student fees being resolved. It has been resolved. Marketing will have this included in the adult education is free. So we were trying to get a sense of being clear with students about what is the cost and do they get charged? And then there's some confusion. We're working on that right now so that we clear that confusion and they're not being charged. We still, of course, will need to charge that base materials fee, which is $4.50 per course. Yeah.
And there's a question about increasing this potential to increases. We'll come to it. Has the college posted full-time job positions for community education that have failed? Not a single full-time position have we posted that has failed. Our searches for full-time positions have not failed. Those that have failed are primarily part-time positions.
Next question. What efforts have been made beyond the WTCS grant to secure additional funding for ComEd? Is this a response to that?
Yeah, okay. I can take that. So we had 2 full-time positions addition to the 4 that we got the grant for this fall. We will hire 2 additional full-time faculty for the spring. So between fall and spring, there will be 4 full-time positions outside the LTEs that we got the grant for. In addition, I just converted the general education English full-time position to an LTE for spring. So that is a 5th position that is going to be full-time. And that's why I was saying absolutely, Director Chase, that, you know, I have these numbers right. The reason why I'm converting the English position to an LTE for ELL is because this is not the right time to hire for general education. The best time to hire for general education is in the fall. So I worked with my supervisor and he allowed me to do that.
So the question there was really about funding. So I'd say 3 things. What Dr. Isaka was commenting on is how is it that we identify funding opportunities within the institution by looking at resources elsewhere? That's what you're hearing. We're doing that broadly, faculty as well. 2 other things, and is that mentioned in here about the 500,000? Did you move that? We were working on
I took that away because we already have expended it. The 4 positions will transition into the spring.
Yeah, and more a matter of, as a reminder, we had about $500,000 that came to us from the WCTS system to support the growth. The third thing I would comment, and you and I have reflected on this, and it's more a matter of how we'll report in the future that will increase our available funds, which is these programs are nested inside of Title II grants, right? And those are known as WEO funds across the United States and in the state of Wisconsin. When you have increases and outputs, you have the potential to actually access more funds to support your program. To the extent that works within Wisconsin, we have to identify what that looks like. And it's usually as an outcome of that cycle, and then you report and you get feedback. And it's also as of funds are available. Sometimes there's a limited pot for the state. So technically monies that you take might be taken away from other people. So it's not like it's an unlimited amount. We have to look at that and reflect. We should see some increase there, but I can't really comment on the amount at this time. So question was about funding. I've given you 3 responses as a relationship there.
Is the college actively sourcing any leads to source funding? This is a Laura Braid question. I intend my response is that I'm exploring additional funding, especially through Title II, which Dr. King has mentioned. We also want to work with the foundation to see how we can grow that.
Okay. The next question is, what are the current enrollment and waiting list numbers for ESL, ELL? You did hear Sadiq mention earlier that he sees forward a 700 increased headcount in spring over spring, right? Compared to last spring. To the extent that I'll just be clear, because I wonder if we'll get the question. That is not a 700 headcount increase over this semester?
No.
Okay, so that
Same
which we
time.
built to support can carry through into spring. That's the expectation, but we're not done with enrollments yet. And remember, this is a lot of in-person enrollments as they start the semester. So we're looking to support. Embedded in the report or this Q&A, when we get it to you, will be a fall enrollment report that will give you directly those ESL, ELL numbers. And then secondly, just for clarity, we have, official wait lists and unofficial wait lists. What does that really mean? The system is so the system, when you sign up, allows for us to use a wait list, create it, and students be on it. Most of these programs, ELL, ESL focus, really have that front end of in-person contact. So they do a lot of stuff by hand. So I say unofficial wait lists. That means that sometimes that's, someone writing down the name and gathering it comes from the faculty. That's not necessarily the best way to gather data. I'm not saying it's inappropriate. It's just that sometimes all of those data sources don't go all the way through to get to us to the endpoint, right?
Right.
Next
And,
question.
and traditionally, our students don't register online. When students register online and the course is filled, it gives them the option to be on a wait list for that course. Our courses are not like that. So when the course is full, we open a new one and start putting students in there. Next question.
Yeah.
Do we survey the students to know their demographics? Absolutely. This is a federal requirement, a state requirement, so we do.
Next question was, what communities other than or in addition to Hispanic communities will be impacted if we close the ESL program? Again, remember you guys gave us these questions. So when we're here, close the program, I pause. So we're not talking about that. Our response, immigrant communities in Malacca that will be impacted potentially would be our Ukrainian, Albanian, Arabs, Africans, Afghans, many Southeast Asians, including
Muslims.
Thank you, sir.
And others.
So that to some extent represents the broadness of who we are bringing in. I do believe there are other groups that are partaking. Yeah.
Yes.
These are the highest numbers, I think, that are represented parenthetically to answer the question.
Right.
Okay.
I forgot to mention Mo.
Yes, as well. Okay.
Good too. Do we take attendance? Absolutely. This is also a federal requirement.
Next question, do we have a way of knowing if the students are actually attending classes and finishing levels? Yes. To the issue of attendance taking in this area in particular, a lot of time and attention is dedicated to it. And again, it's also, if any of you have done any of this work related to grants and reporting, this is one of the most rigorous grant reporting areas that we have. So we're really required to demonstrate when they're coming in, how they're doing initially, what their test taking behaviors are, what their outputs are. And we're reporting constantly on that. Is that fair?
Right.
Okay.
What data do we have on retention? We will request the retention data from IR and we'll share that with you because we do not know. Our students are very transitional. They come and stop at very abrupt intervals, and because of that, it is very hard to really know who is there at any point in time.
Finished all the way through?
Right. So a lot of ESL students have to work, and some might move onto after they learn a little bit of English. Yeah. What data do you have as to how many students actually go through the different levels until they finish? That was another question. Program registration data is what we use. There are 3 codes, for instance, for the ELL students. And those codes are the questions we ask them when they come in. What's your reason for wanting to learn English? Is it for post-secondary education, for employment, or just to function in the community?
Great. Next question was, can we get an actual or as close to cost per student per semester or level? And then parenthetically, so in response, we are still working on giving you those cost data. I know you asked for them, but it's really it's not a cost per FTE would look like that. This just doesn't generate FTE. So we're looking at the cost for the whole overall program, as we've heard it today, like faculty cost, staff cost, what potential students intake, so what are we bringing in materials, course fees, and we should be then able to express to you a cost per student, most likely, and overall cost of the program. We expect to have that to you in January.
Another question is, we keep hearing that there aren't enough teachers available to hire. Do we have data to back that up? Yes, I do. HR can provide data on failed part-time ELL searches, but I do have a report from the talent acquisition partner for our hiring process on all the positions that are available, the ones that have been filled, when, and who has been filled. So I can share that with you.
What steps have been taken to find additional candidates as a relationship to hiring? I think broadly for faculty, I believe that's the question. We've expanded where we post ESL, ELL vacancies with professional organizations, community organizations, etc. I would also follow up to say I've had quite a few conversations with L Bonds in HR about this, about what are their avenues for posting. It is a portion of their job, and sometimes, believe it or not, one of the highest level strategies I heard in my previous position were ways that we work when we worked in person, which is some of your best recruitment opportunities happen by connecting with others that you know. Believe it or not, it isn't necessarily sometimes through all these larger recruitment efforts. So you have to look at a multiplicity of efforts. Our recruitment team within HR does use those efforts as it relates broadly to the college and specifically to this population.
The next question is almost like the first one. Have we reached out to the community organizations that spoke to the board to help us either spread the word or help identify potential hires? Yes.
So next question, what are we doing beyond the normal posting of openings to address this issue with urgency? We've revised our current, our ESL, ELL, again, synonymous credential document to remove barriers for qualified candidates who don't have very specific requirements. For example, numbers of years of teaching experience at specific levels. I will say again, looking at credentials from other areas of the country, oftentimes this category in other places requires terminal masters in TESOL, and it's very specific. In the state, we have more flexibility. You have actually done hiring within that context. You look at other master's terminal degrees, might be English as a foreign language, it's slightly different. It's a nuance, but it is different. If you're a master's of TESOL, you would know exactly why and tell me. And there are other nuances, and including people with bachelor's degrees and have experience and numbers of years experience. So what we're looking at is trying to really be thoughtful about that full expression of what it could look like to attract the greatest number of candidates possible that may have some of those backgrounds, because it might not just be that purest master's degree.
Right. You do not need a master's degree to teach community education, for instance, but for ELL, it's stated that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next question is, are we allowed in any way to ask if a student could pay more for the classes? I think the $450 or the $550 that we currently charge some students are even unable to pay that, and that's just a material fee. If we're to increase the fee, course fee, I think it will help the bottom line, but I think we'll be excluding a lot of students, and I don't think it's a good idea at this point.
You do indicate here it's statutory.
It's statutory, yes, we cannot.
Yes. I think our next question was, can we switch to a model allow us to charge more than the $4.50 they're paying? I think you just heard Dr. Ishaku's response. That might discourage enrollment. That $4.50 sometimes is a barrier all by itself.
What is the actual financial impact on the college's bottom line if we continue to run the ESL program as we are doing currently? I said we could reach a situation where we can no longer run the program as open entry.
Specific to ESL or specific to community ed or ESL within it.
Okay. And the reason why, when we say open entry to it, it goes to all year round, all semester round. Students come and go. So we just allow students in the program all of them. Unlike post-secondary where registration ends on this day, because of financial aid reasons, for example, you cannot register after a certain date in post-secondary education. Community education, you can register 3 days to the end of the semester.
I'm going to interrupt now because I'm a little conscious of how late we're running here. The question here was, what's the overall financial impact? Do you have a direct answer to that question? Okay, let's move on.
What is the financial impact on the college bottom line for continuing to run? We just answered 2 more questions. What is the projected impact if we were to accommodate all those who want to participate in the ESL program? could exacerbate the current situation we're in, having to cancel sections due to lack of faculty. So we had higher demand than you'd even heard this semester, and we couldn't meet it because we have a crunch with, availability of faculty. You are hearing that. We would have to cancel. We might run out of classroom space. That is a consideration. We're expanding as possible at Walker's currently. Again, remember the programs are all across at all the campuses. So I think there's a lock on space in some locations, not in all locations. And as they're tuition free, we may not be able to support them financially. Our last question.
Last question, what have MATC and the foundation done to obtain donations? I think we've answered this one, but we're working with foundation to see if they can reach out to the community to help us.
Okay, now that we've heard all of that, are there any additional questions or comments?
Well, I have several additional questions. I'd like to thank the board for obviously continuing to look after this issue. You guys had some great questions. I don't feel as though this is what I asked for or board members asked for as far as a presentation as to strides and where we are, because I think we're approaching that 1 year mark. And I don't feel like we've made any measurable strides at this point based off of the information that we hear today and what we hear in open comments. I was hoping that I would be able to see some of those measurable strides somewhere, and I don't feel like that was provided. I would have liked to have had the responses to their questions as well prior to the board meeting. So that, they said a lot. There were a bunch of questions there, probably 12, 13 questions, if not more. And then having to wait to the end to kind of go back and forth with them, and then trying to be conscious of time. I feel as though I couldn't ask a lot of those questions right at the time that they were spoken. So I did write some of them down, and to save time, I'll go ahead and send them to the chair so you can forward back to them. But I would like to see some of what they've done on paper instead of just spoken to me. One of those strides that you guys mentioned that you made were student fees. You said that was something that we completed, but then you also in turn said that we're working on it. So it's either completed or you're working to get it completed. So that's when I say measurable data or strides that you have completed. That's what I would like to see. I'm aware of the application issue. I don't think this question made it into you guys' sets of questions. There was an application issue about an illegal resident, whether or not a person was a resident. And then sometimes those students were getting charged those extra fees. And at a point, the administration told us unequivocally that the question could not be removed, it could not be changed. And then there were recent conversations that was saying that, oh, the state said we don't need it at all. So when I'm told something unequivocally for months on end, and then we're at the end of the year, I was like, oh no, we could have changed that, months ago. Those are the kind of things that, kind of frustrate the process for me with not being able to see it. So I would rather see it, see what you're saying, and be able to measure it later on. I think prior to, we received like an actual chart of some of the things that they were doing, like conversations. I think this had to be back in like April or May. And I was expected to see something similar to that instead of just this one sheet and then not even having the questions so I can actually look back on them. But to save time, I will submit the questions that I do have based off of that, and I guess I'll review this section later to see if there's anything additional.
Let me just ask you a question to make sure that we're understanding what you're asking for. You want measurable responses. So one of the measurements is the increase in enrollment. Second is the increase in faculty. What other measurable things do you have in mind that you would like to know?
Okay, so the testing thing was a huge issue. Like some of the issues that were brought to the board were testing, the enrollment, the faculty. And if we can actually see that, I feel like,
What do
we
you mean
were-
by, what do you mean by texting as a measurable?
say it again.
What do you mean by texting as a measurable?
Testing.
Oh, testing. I'm sorry. Yes, okay.
There were issues
So
surrounding
there were
testing.
questions about whether we had enough people to administer the test.
Right, like, has that been resolved
Okay.
at this point? The student fee issue, they stated tonight that it was resolved, but they're continuing to work on it. So it's either resolved or it's not resolved. And then the measurable around like the FTEs, I mean, not the FTE, the full-time faculty members at the last board meeting, we were continually told that there's not enough talent. Nobody's looking for that job. So that's why I asked a very specific question. Have you posted the full-time faculty position and those have failed? And they stated no. So then
Okay,
that
so they
leaves us
said
to
no,
budget.
and they said they hired enough or arranged enough people to address this increase. So
The increase of 1,000 that they had this fall, but was it enough? Because we had the faculty that came back to us saying that it wasn't enough, that there were 3 to 4 instructors for one particular class. So is that sustainable? And I was a bit confused about the 12 full-time faculty. I didn't know if that was already included, or are you saying you need 12 additional faculty members?
We've hired them. That
All
equivalent- That equivalent number have been hired for fall, current.
For fall?
Right.
Okay, so in addition, if you can see it continue growth, you would need more than that.
Next fall or spring?
So let me say, fall enrollments are normally traditionally higher than
Yeah,
spring
mhm.
enrollments. So if we have been able to hire enough to satisfy the fall need, we anticipate if we hold the same number of faculty into the spring, we should be able to meet our spring need. In addition, we have hired 4 additional faculty. I mentioned that very specifically.
Okay, so is it 4 or 5? Because
4
I was-
full-time faculty, 1 LTE, that's 5.
okay. And that one is for the spring, because that's what I wrote, right?
That is for the spring, and the document that we just presented is going to be available to you. So all those numbers are on that document.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have additional questions still. So again, to save time, I can submit them to you.
I wish you would,
Yeah.
because we do still have a number of things to attend to tonight. Dr. Najib, do you have a question?
Yeah, just I keep hearing that looks like we look at the ESL students as a drain on the college because they don't pay tuition or they don't pay full tuition. Just and we spoke last time about it that really this is maybe the best advertisement for the college to recruit more students. So, for example, we just heard in the report on fall student 2024, we have the percentage of student non-white, non-black people is almost 50%, right? So where do you think those came from? Isn't it possible that their parent were there at MATC and try to learn English, and then they provided to their family, and then their children came back to the MATC? So, do we have any statistics that's, for example, just to see those students, the non-white, non-black people, just ask their parent, did they go to MATC or not? Just to see that our investment in those immigrants, that really it pays off. It gave us a lot of students later on. So I would like to change just the perception about it. We don't want to always say that it's a drain or the program cannot continue. We need to find resources really to support that, because I think the cost of this program may be even less than other programs because they don't need so much like initially. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not familiar with everything, but we can find resources to support it because it's the best really way to advertise for the college. I'm gonna stop there because of the sake of time.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I will submit my questions to you.
Okay,
I just want to say that I'm happy that you accomplished the hiring and being able to serve those additional 1,000 students. So
Thank you.
kudos for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Director Bakens.
Okay, I'll make this real. So one, there is a program at UWM that specifically graduates bilingual and ESL educators. I don't know if we've connected with them in particular. It's run by Dr. Tatiana Joseph.
Yeah,
But it might be,
most of our faculty are from there. They
Okay.
graduated from that program. And when we are posting positions, we give it to faculty to share within their network as well. I think.
Okay. because it's a very, they've also been very successful at getting grants for cohorts. I know they've done it for K-12s, but obviously I think good for us. Question number 3, I think the onboarding issues were not just staff. I think they were in part what Director Burris was referring to. There were issues with the forms people had to use. And so I think as you look to answer these questions going forward to address that aspect of it, not just the staff, the staffing is very important also. Title II grants, just for us to think about, can our federal representatives help us in navigating some of that to make sure that we're maximizing our funding out of that? And when you talk, my 4th thing, when you're talking about the hiring, is that just at Walker Square or is that hiring that's hiring across all of our?
Across
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
System.
Thank you. Anything else on this subject? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's
Thank you.
move on to the Zancell update.
So you know, I don't think about committees.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm joined by Dewan Schland online full-time faculty and our Executive Vice President of Local 212. Also here in the room, we have Manager of Internal Audit in case any questions that come up. He's willing to assist with that as well. So I want to acknowledge that upfront. So thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you here. I think I managed to confuse you last time, so my apology upfront. You know, there was just a lot of going back and forth. I think we talked about lead faculties, answers, and so on and so forth. The focus of tonight is going to be Zancell, and we'll be more than happy. I'll be more than happy to present to you in the future in more detail about the lead faculty if you have any questions related to that. So to this extent, I've recorded the presentation. I'll be glad to address any questions that you may have, along with my partner.
I'm a little confused. Are we, Dwayne, are you here to ask questions or something specific?
He's co-presenting with me. And
oh, he's co-presenting with you.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Good.
His name was on.
Yeah, I know. I missed the introduction. We're all looking a little tired here. I'm not sure that we are really up to asking questions about this tonight. Just sense of the board. Do you want to push this the next time?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have.
Maybe we can send questions. Send the question to him and he can answer it next time.
I can do that. I'll be happy to, and then I can come back and present if needed or as needed.
Well, and just that, I think, we have the teachers union sitting there with administration working on this together. And so, there's a point where I think we can trust the process a bit. And, there's obviously some work that's gone into what I read and in the presentation that was given. And I think that an update on it next month, knowing that the affected parties are all sitting together working on it.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much
for a great presentation.
You left us speechless. Review of the board self-evaluation instrument. We have 3 people who have never used it. We had 3 people who have used it once and it hasn't been changed since the last time. Let me ask the question this way. Is there anyone on the board who feels that they need a deeper explanation of this is our evaluation of our own participation? Or not? More on Monday, I saw you shaking your head yes, or that yes, you need more.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. I can't get it to come up as a link here, and I'm not sure if others were able to get it.
That was just part of the.
Yeah, it comes up with you, it's part of the agenda.
Yeah,
Part of the
it
agenda,
won't.
that's
At the
Oh.
moment, it won't.
Okay, you can use mine.
All right, so this is fundamentally our evaluation of ourselves as a board. Are we spending enough time on the right issues? Are we digging deep enough? Are we getting the information that we need? Are we putting in the effort that's required? I have made the comment for the last few years that you get one time we'll let you say I don't know.
The first time.
That's the first
Yes.
time that you all have to be responsible for knowing that these are the ways we are judging ourselves, and to make sure that if there's something you don't know the answer to, that you raise that, look into it, ask for input, help, resources, what have you. I think you will find that there are questions here that lead you to the conclusion that maybe you don't have enough information about some things and you should ask for it. Better that you ask for it now than 6 months from now. And the answers to all the questions are in the nature of, virtually all the questions are in the nature of that you strongly agree through, strongly disagree or don't know. Absent specific questions, I'm not sure what else needs to be said about this. Does anybody have a specific question about it or how we're going to use it? Director?
Will we be allowed to have conversation with one another? Either in open forum or in closed session to kind of understand what our internal responsibilities might be with one another. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does. The first answer to your question is you can certainly talk to other members of the board. Please don't turn it into a walking quorum.
I meant like when we
yes, so when you fill them out, they will be aggregated. And in the past, if I've had 2 people who say I don't know or I strongly disagree about something on the same question, then I will ask us to have a conversation about that. Again, we all have different times, we have different commitments. Maybe you can or cannot do one of the things on there, but if someone is consistently saying they strongly disagree, someone is consistently saying they don't know, or if multiple people are saying those things, then I think we need to know why, we need to talk them out. So yes, that would be the plan at the next board meeting after it's filled out. Okay. And when do we submit that for completion? Which month?
Completion, we probably usually don't do it until about March.
Okay, that's the time frame. So you have time to learn all those things you don't presently know about. And please, raise your hand and ask. The resources exist. Again, I'm going to make an executive decision here to move us forward.
Do you need approval on that?
I don't see that as a vote at this point. I think a question, do we have to reapprove this? Right, I think we just use it, and at the end of the year, we decide whether we want to change it going forward.
I'm sorry, what agenda item are you talking about? I don't see it with me.
It's part of the materials that were linked to the agenda.
Number 7,
Number 7, thank you.
7C, the review of board self-evaluation instrument.
As I said, I can't get it to come up here right now. So thank you,
I
Sonia.
have 7B, I don't have 7C.
Oh,
After the Zansville update.
So I'm looking at the top of the 1, 2, 3. Well, that's the wrong way. I can't do it that way.
second page.
Second page.
Yeah,
Second
but
page.
I've got notes in here that.
But
change
he
the
only
heading.
has.
He only
A and B.
has 2 pages.
Yeah.
So you do not have a list for item 7 that has an A, B, and C on it?
No, I have only A, B, that's, I don't have.
Are
Get the
you,
link from the website.
No, I didn't go to the website. Shall I go to website?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, because the agenda sometimes
updated,
changes.
yeah.
No.
Okay,
Okay, that's fine. I'll look for it then. That's fine. Go ahead.
He's a good student.
Okay.
He got the early version.
All right, that leads us to new business. Any new business for the future? Yes.
I would like some answers on what was presented earlier by the students for the West Town Green, their safety concerns and the management of leases and payments.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this list of their phone numbers here to Dr. Martin, so you can get this to the right person. And I think another thing that needs to be communicated to them is although people can come here to talk about these things, there's really a different point in the organization. They should be able to address these questions to and get.
Right, so they don't have to wait so
Yeah,
long to
and
get the answers.
yeah, and they need to know who that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Anything else? Okay, future events, after I have cajoled, pushed, and begged you all to go to all of the DBA meetings, the one for January has been canceled. There's gonna be a board of directors meeting, which I will be attending as a member of their board. But the next meeting will be in the spring, and we will certainly tell you about it in time for you to register. Our next regular board meeting is January 23rd at 4:30 PM in this room. And we do have an item to discuss in closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
just happen to have him with me. Mr. Chair, I move the district board convene into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent E of the Wisconsin statutes to discuss item 10, review Greenwood Asher presidential profile feedback and other matters regarding Greenwood Asher's engagement. The board may reconvene into open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session under item 10 if necessary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion by Director Baker. We have an arm wrestle for the second.
I'll give it up if we
Okay,
can just
Director
declare
Burris
it a
is seconded.
second.
We have to take a roll call.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Najib,
Yes.
Director Owen Moore,
Excuse.
Director Pence,
Yes.
Director Baker,
Yes.
Director Burris. Aye. Director Kate.
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Aye.
Director Foley.
Aye. Motion passes. I would suggest we take a 7-minute break here.